All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Everybody hit that like and subscribe. You know I would do it for you. And let's party. Big shout out to the replay gang. Thank you so much for coming back to watch this, even though you missed the live party, guys. That is the best part. So make sure you are here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and sometimes whenever I feel like it. So hit that subscribe, ring the bell, and you will never miss an Indian Jesus live party ever again. If you are enjoying the show and would like to support the Indian Jesus, head over to theindianjesus.com for your official merch only at theindianjesus.com. All right. We have an interesting show for you guys today. So I'm sure that you are, between the thumbnail and, going online, I'm sure you've seen that Jordan Peterson and Destiny sat down and had a debate, conversation, whatever you want to call it. And I was excited to go through, just the whole thing, maybe do like a two-parter, top to bottom. Huge fans of Jordan Peterson, but for some reason, we don't get, or I don't get the opportunity to use his content as much as I would like to. And I mean, it seems like maybe I used Destiny's content a little bit too much, but when it is there, and I want to take the best of it. So let's do it. So the full debate was about 2 hours. So shout out to Destiny's editor. Thank you. They made a 34-minute cut of basically just the Rona stuff. If we do have some time, I'd like to go back into the official thing and check out their discussion on climate change and stuff. I didn't think I'd have to say this stuff, but guys, if you don't want my commentary, what we are watching is linked in the description on its own. As always, if you cannot hear the video, please do let me know.
Versus, it wasn't a bloody vaccine. No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
It's
What,
not.
because it have a 100% success rate? You think it's a definition of vaccine? The whole point of the vaccine is to give your body a protein to train on so that your immune system works. Who cares if it's not the same? There's different types.
They used the word vaccine so that they didn't have to contend with the fact that it wasn't the same technology.
There are different types of vaccines
that are
different technologies.
Fine.
The mRNA vaccines is a type of vaccine technology.
Vaccines. Now this is vaccine.
No, it was like this, and now it's like this.
No. It was like this, and now it's like this. The goddamn vaccines.
Like the ones that they did do for the vaccines, and they continue to do to this day. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
You really
correct.
think that you're in a position to evaluate the scientific credibility of the trials for the vaccines, do you?
No,
really?
I don't. So I have to trust.
Then what are you doing?
I have to do,
I don't trust. I looked at the blood data.
First of all.
How would you?
All right. Shout out to Guam Tech. Welcome to the party. We also got Zippy the Strange. Guys, if you are here, please say hello. I would love to welcome you. Let's do it.
Characterize the difference, in your opinion, between the left and the conservative political viewpoints.
On a very, very, very broad level, if there's some like good world that we're all aiming for, I think people on the left seem to think that a collection of taxes from a large population that goes into a government that's able to precisely kind of dole out where that tax money goes. You're basically able to take the problems of society. You're able to scrape off, hopefully, not super significant amount of money from people that can afford to give a lot of money. And
what does that mean? I have no idea what that means.
And through government programs and redistribution, you target those taxes essentially to people that kind of need whatever bare minimum to take advantage of opportunities in society. Yeah.
Okay.
And then on the conservative end, I guess a conservative would generally think that why would the government take my money? I think from a community point of view, through churches, through community action, through families, we can better allocate our own dollars to our own friends and family to help them and give them the things that they need so that they can better participate in and thrive in society, basically.
Fair enough starting point, I think. Shout out to Unwanted Foe. Oh, my goodness, coming in hot with the $5 super chat. And of course, you guys know that every single donation comes with a treat for my co-host, Morty here. Oh, let's get all this bullshit out the way. Yummy, eat it up. No, this one. There you go. Thank you. And of course, that makes you the new sponsor of the stream. What does Unwanted Foe say? Vaccine, what the Fed says they need to inject into you. That's it. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, so one of the things that I've always found a mystery, I mean, I think there's an equal mystery on the left and on the right in this regard, is that the more conservative types tend to be very skeptical of big government, and the leftist types tend to be more skeptical of big corporations.
Are they though? Are they though? Because you see the, things like, especially in the heyday of Black Lives Matter, it was Walmart saying Black Lives Matter, and it was leftists saying Black Lives Matter. So I don't really know about that. We see all the leftist BS sold and paraded around by every corporation. So I don't know about that. Shout out to David. Welcome to the party. Big shout out to David, who showed me this edit so that we're going to get the meat of the conversation without having to break it up. Very much appreciated. So this was a pretty big disagreement I had with JLP or JBP. Talking about Jesse Lee Peterson or JBP. But I disagree with him as well. I disagree that the leftists are not or are against the big corporations. I mean, certain ones, sure, but I don't know.
In this, and the leftist types tend to be more skeptical of big corporations. Right. Well, following through the logic that you just laid out, you made the suggestion that one of the things that characterizes people on the left is the belief that government can act as an agent of can and should act as an agent of distribution. Okay. A potential problem for that is the gigantism of the government that does that. Now, the conservatives are skeptical of that gigantism. And likewise, the liberals, the progressives in particular, we'll call them progressives, are skeptical of the reach of gigantic corporations. And I've always seen a commonality in those two, in that both of them are skeptical of gigantism. And so one of the things that I'm concerned about, generally speaking, with regard to the potential for the rise of tyranny is the emergence of giants. And
the giants, whether it's government or corporate. David said liberals are probably most skeptical of the motivation of corporate entities, profit over workers and consumers, more so than specifically with large corporations. Yeah, I think that's a much fairer way to articulate that. I agree, sir.
With regard to the potential for the rise of tyranny is the emergence of giants. And one potential problem with the view that the government can and should act as an agent of redistribution is that there is an incentive put in place, two kinds of incentives. Number one, a major league incentive towards gigantism and tyranny. And number two, an incentive for psychopaths who use compassion to justify their grip on power, to take money and to claim that they're doing good. And I see that happening everywhere now particularly in the name of compassion. And it's one of the things that's made me very skeptical in particular about the left.
Yep. It's like we have to do all these things that seem like they're really bad, but it's because we have to help this problem, and there's no other way to solve this problem than our solution. And no. It is a problem. And if you question us, then that's racist. Lumsdick said historically, it was the left who disrupts the corporations. Think hippies and going against big business and the medical industry. Yeah, definitely not the case now. And that was the biggest surprise of all of this, the Rona stuff, was how I don't know if it's how quickly that things changed, because it doesn't seem like, like post Occupy Wall Street. I don't know that big pharma, it was definitely a left-wing policy to be against big pharma, but I don't know how at the forefront that was. And so I don't know if it was a quick change, but the change from where, it used to be the lefties that were anti-vaxxers, and that just completely flipped. Yeah, the left is now full corporate. Yeah. And I mean, again, I think that, what David is saying is that they're skeptical of motivations and why you're doing this and that, but not enough to call out the virtue signaling. It's just like, hey, well, it worked for us, so good enough. Shout out to Dylan Soup. Welcome to the party. Good to see you, brother.
In the name of compassion. It's one of the things that's made me very skeptical, in particular about the left, and at least about the progressive edge of the left. So I'm curious about what you think about those two. First of all, it's a paradox to me that the conservatives and the leftists face off each other with regard to their concern about different forms of gigantism, and don't seem to notice that the thing that unites them is some antipathy. This is especially true.
Yeah. So the thing that unites people like us and people who are even on the far left is that we look and see, oh, power is concentrated too much. Now, our answer to that is very, 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 very different. But by and large, that is the issue. Too small of a group of people have too much power. Shout out to M169. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Always good to see ya.
For the libertarians, some antipathy towards gigantic structures per se. And so then I would say, with regards to your antithesis between liberalism and conservatives, the conservatives are pointing to the fact that there are intermediary forms of distribution that can be utilized to solve the social problems that you're describing that don't bring with them the associated problem of gigantism.
Right. So shout out to Giorgio. Welcome, welcome. Said I've thought repeatedly that it seems like those on the left are most likely to be manipulated by sociopaths with a kind exterior. Yeah, that level of, oh, well, you're saying nice things, or inversely, well, you're saying mean things, so you must be a bad person. Yeah, I completely agree. Welcome to the party.
And like it's been shocking to me to watch the left, especially in the last 6 years, ally itself, for example, with pharmaceutical companies, which was something I never thought I would see in my lifetime. I mean, for decades, the only gigantic corporations the left was more skeptical of than the fossil fuel companies were the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
And that all seemed to vanish overnight around the COVID time. So I know the story. That's a lot of things to throw at you, but
All right.
it sort of outlines the territory that we could probably investigate productively.
Yeah, so a couple things. I would say that the current political landscape we have, I think, is less. I understand the concept of conservatives supporting corporations and liberals supporting like large government. I think today the divide we're starting to see more and more is more of like a populist, anti-populist rise, or even like an institutional or anti-institutional rise. So, for instance, I think conservatives today in the United States are largely characterized with, I would say, with populism, in that they're supporting like certain figures, namely right now Donald Trump, who they think alone can kind of like lead them against the corrupt institutions, be them corporate or government.
See, right there, I'm already going to stop him because that's not the case. Well, okay, but let me amend that. That may be the case for some people, but that is the misconception of, the cult of MAGA. There are people who think that he's some savior, and I've talked about this before, but there's some people who think that. But I think overwhelmingly, the people who are willing to vote for Trump in 2024 are not looking at him to save anything, but just looking at him as the only option to stop, the spiraling that we're seeing. And so it's not that Trump is going to fix everything. He's just going to not continue damaging everything at the pace that it is. And so maybe we can fix things. It's not that we're looking to him to fix everything. We just need to get the people out who are ruining everything that is not based. So he said, Trump is not a leader, just another fighter. Well, I'd say both, but agreed.
Alone can kind of like lead them against the corrupt institutions, be them corporate or government. I feel like most conservatives today are not as trustful of big corporations as they were back in like the Bush era, where we would, conservatives would champion, big corporations.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
That's a strange thing because it makes the modern conservatives a lot more like the 60s leftists.
Potentially, yeah.
And that's why I before when I was a 2015 liberal, I would call myself a neo-hippie. Like, I'm basically just a hippie, but I shower and shave. And I mean, it's crazy, again, how quickly all of this has just turned around. 169 said Trump is a good stop measure to allow breathing room. Bingo. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's really the long and short of it, because anything bad you can say about Trump, I'll probably agree with you. Maybe not, but I'll probably agree with you. That doesn't mean that Trump's bad is superseded by, or rather that Biden is superseded by that bad stuff. The Biden bad is way worse than the Trump bad, in my personal opinion. Shout out to Levy. Welcome to the party. So the people who are ruining our life is the rich and the government. Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily like to say the rich, because it really depends on who we're talking about. There's nothing wrong with having acquired money. That doesn't inherently mean that you've done something bad. But the people who are trying to create a world where there is a class of people who can be rich and will be rich, and a class of people who can't be rich and won't be rich, that is a problem. And sounds like the government to me. Trump is less a leader and more a focal point. We have few real leaders in the West anymore. Sadly.
Conservatives a lot more like the 60s leftists.
Potentially, yeah.
I mean, that brings us into the issue, too, of whether the left-right divide is actually a reasonable way of construing the current political landscape at all. And I'm not sure it is, but...
Do you guys think that, I mean, aside from the very basic, like, I'm not for Biden, or I'm not for Trump, the very basic liberal conservative. I mean, it is useful because those views are so far apart, but they're not very specific. So I do think there is a use, but if we want to get specific, it's left, right, or conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican. They're just not specific enough to get us anywhere.
Right now, it kind of is, but only because so many conservatives are following Trump. So like your populist, anti-populist thing kind of maps on kind of cleanly to the left and right. It doesn't work with progressives, though, or the far left, because they're also anti-large everything. So in a surprising way...
Well, not everything, but we'll give it to them.
On very, very far left people, you might find them having a bit more in common with kind of like a MAGA Trump supporter than like a center-left liberal. So for instance, like both of these groups of people on the very far left will be very dovish on foreign policy.
What do you mean by this, Sibi?
Probably a little bit more isolationist. They're not a big fan of like a ton of immigration or a ton of trade with other countries. They might think that there's a lot of institutional capture of both government and corporations. So both all of the MAGA supporters and the far, far left might think that corporations don't have our best interest at heart and the government is corrupt and captured by lobbyists. Yeah, you'll see a lot of overlap there.
Oh, very true. Very true.
I think that sometimes there's a couple things. One, this is something I feel like I've discovered. People have no principles. I think that people are largely guided by whatever is kind of satisfying them or making them feel good at the time. I think that's a really important thing to understand because...
So, Destiny, would you say that, agreeing that, there's too much overlap and it's not descriptive enough, but if we were to say that people on the left or people on the right, those who are more likely to not have principles and just do whatever they want to do at the time because it's what they want to do. Would you find more of that on the right, or in the values of the right, or on the left? Exactly.
People's beliefs will seem to change at random. If you're trying to imagine that a belief is coming from some underlying principle or is governed by some internal, like moral or reasonable code or whatever, I think generally there are large social groups and people kind of follow them along from thing to thing, which is why you end up in strange worlds sometimes where, like the position on vaccines and being an anti-vaxxer might have been seen as something, 10 years ago as kind of like a hippie leftist. And now maybe it's more like a conservative, or it's associated more with like MAGA Trump supporters or whatever.
Well, I want to stop there because the anti-vaxxer that is the MAGA Trump supporter is very different, a very different person than is the even the early 2000s. This is gonna give my kid autism because Jenny Jameson told me. Those are two very different things, and the anti-vax associated with Trump is specifically this one, not the vaccine technology. Want to post to the far left / woke is very anti-large business while being pro fire for all buildings and collateral damage. Was it Jenny McCarthy? I thought it was Jenna Jameson. Either way, you know what I mean. But great. Zibby said, exclusive IP rights allows for absolute centralization in a globalized economy. When you control the distribution of information and innovation, you control trade, thus control governance. So again, I still got to get you up here. Maybe we'll get you a VTuber thing, but I got to get you up here to talk about these IP rights because I don't see it. I see some of the things that you're saying, but just abolish them. It doesn't make sense to me. MX9 said this particular issue knows no particular party. It's been brewing for a long damn time. Indeed.
And now maybe it's more like a conservative, or it's associated more with like MAGA Trump supporters or whatever. I think as a result of how the social groups move around. When it comes to you mentioned this like gigantism thing. That's another thing where I'm not sure if people actually care about gigantism or if they're using it as a proxy for other things that they don't like. Like I could totally imagine.
Well, I care about it.
Sure. Yeah, you might. Yeah,
Great.
sorry. It just
That's
mean in
okay.
general.
That's
yeah.
okay.
Because like I could imagine somebody saying that like they don't trust like a large government. They think there's too much, prone to tyranny or something like that. But
something like that. Something like that. Yeah, just something like that.
also be supportive of an institution like the Catholic Church, which is literally, one guy who is a direct line to
but they
God.
can't tax.
So that there is a solid or valid point that Destiny makes about the Catholic Church or any one church or any one religion that is centralized. That is a valid point. However, as the anti-theist atheist, I'm going to agree with Jordan Peterson's rebuttal to this. So, we're talking about centralized power, and again, great example that the Catholic Church is extremely hyper centralized, but this is the counterpart.
An institution like the Catholic Church, which is literally one guy who is a direct line to
But they
God.
can't tax.
Well, I mean,
And they don't have a military.
that
And
is
they can't conscript you.
true.
Right?
Yeah.
And they
So at that level, this is why, as somebody who is deeply against religion, because of the things that Jordan Peterson just listed, my issues are with leftism and woke ideology at this point in time, before the existence or validity of religion. And once again, I said, many like to blame Jenny McCarthy, love her as a scapegoat, when in fact it was doing a shit ton of reading and connecting the dots. And so, I mean, that's precisely the point, is that I don't even know the science on all of the vaccines. I mean, obviously, I'm sure if you have kids that it becomes a lot more relevant. When I was a kid, there was vaccines, but it wasn't like, I think the list is up to like 80 or something now. I definitely do believe that, like, okay, maybe your kid doesn't need all of these. Maybe your kid doesn't need all of these in 4 different visits and everything. But even still, that's still a very different type. That's a very different position than I don't trust the people who rushed the COVID vaccine and are forcing me to take it. There, as much overlap as there is, it's 2 completely different conversations.
Well, I mean,
and they don't have a military.
That
and
is
they can't conscript
Jesus.
True.
you.
Yeah.
And they can't throw you in jail.
That is true. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, those are pretty. I think he's about to say this. I remember those are pretty significant. That, like, all of those things. If the left, if the wokeness, if these people couldn't do those things, then we wouldn't really care about what they think.
Well, those are major and significant. I mean, I get the overlap. Don't get me wrong.
Sure. But I'm saying, like, even if you had a local government, like if you had a state government or a tribe, usually they've got some form of enacting punishment. It'll be sometimes more brutal, but they can throw you in jail. Conscription hasn't existed in the U.S. since the Vietnam War.
Yet.
I mean, yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah, true. What do you
And that's a good point. That how often do we say, oh, well, this isn't happening, or this isn't happening a lot? And then the obvious response is, well, not yet. Nobody thinks that they can change their gender yet. Nobody thinks that they can actually, okay, you can change your gender. That's just a social construct. Nobody thinks that you actually change your sex yet. Nobody thinks it's a good thing to talk about the fact that you can change your sex yet. Nobody's trying to trans the kids, so on and so forth.
make of the excess deaths?
For related to vaccines, there are almost none. The mRNA vaccines have been administered related to vaccines.
We don't know. No.
We don't know. We absolutely. This is like settled science.
What do we know?
In terms of
I think whenever we hear something according to the science, we are dilly-dilling. The science. That's like settled science. There is no such thing as settled science. Gravity is not even settled science. So, no, sir, you are wrong.
No, we don't know.
We absolutely. This is like settled science.
What do we know?
In terms of vaccine related?
No. That's not my question.
See, what happened was that Jordan Peterson was bringing up the notion of excess deaths, meaning deaths that we wouldn't expect otherwise, and not putting not saying it's directly tied to the vaccines, but bringing it up in that context. Destiny took the extra step and connected the dot for him And so now Jordan Peterson has the opportunity to be like, okay, well, you're the one making the claim about what did or did not happen. All I did was bring up, two facts. And we can talk about maybe they are connected, maybe they're not, but you made the claim.
Related to vaccines?
We don't know. No.
We absolutely know. We absolutely. This is like settled science.
What do we know?
In terms of vaccine related?
No. That's not my question.
Not the question. The excess
deaths in Europe are up about 20%, and they have been since the end of the COVID pandemic.
Really high to me. 20%.
Go look.
I'll check afterwards. But is this including like the Ukrainian war with Russia?
No, it's not including the Ukrainian war.
Okay.
Cope.
No.
Are you implying that you think it's because of vaccines?
I'm not implying anything. I'm saying what the excess deaths are.
But what is your take on what's causing it? Well, you said that in a counter to me describing mRNA vaccines. You said, well, the excess deaths are 20%. That makes it seem that the implication is that the vaccines are causing it.
That's a fair assumption on Destiny's part. When we're talking specifically about this, and then you bring up, a vaccine injury, and then you bring up 20% death, and like, okay, fair. I see where you're coming from. However, this is why it's so important to listen and to be having the conversation instead of trying to win an argument. If you're trying to get ahead and jump where people, even if that, because I'm not fully convinced that Peterson was not trying to make that argument, but by the semantics, how it played out, now Peterson got the upper hand and was able to say, well, I didn't say that.
First of all, something is causing it.
Well, that obviously
something is causing it, or some combination of factors.
Sure.
Now, one possibility is that the healthcare systems were so disrupted by our insane focus on the COVID epidemic.
And if you came late, we are doing the Destiny version where they're just talking about this stuff. And if we have time, I sped it up a little bit because I do want to get to their climate stuff as well. But yeah, let's do it.
That we're still mopping up as a consequence of that.
Wait, are these excess deaths tracing back through COVID as well?
Post-COVID.
Just post-COVID.
Post-COVID.
Okay.
Right. They're terrifying. They're terrifying. And they're not well publicized. And
I think excess deaths are the fact that you're speaking to them right now seems like.
Yeah, but I ferret down a lot of rabbit holes. It's not like it's front bloody page news on the New York Times.
Sure.
Based. Well, you're talking about it right now. That means everybody knows about it. But also at the same time, you're going to get on Piers Morgan and say, nobody believed Fauci and Biden and Rachel Maddow and everybody else who was saying lies about the jab. You can't have it both ways. I mean, hey, I'm here. If you guys want to fund it, let's do it. Actually, hold on. Give me 1 second. I should have set this up, but.
Sure, but I think excess deaths that's a metric that you can Google, and I'm pretty sure there are like 3 different huge organizations that track excess deaths around the world.
Well, there are many more than 3, yes, in every single European country. Right. Okay, well, so one relatively straightforward hypothesis is...
Shout out to Trump. We need so bad 2024, like the name said. Have you ever watched Salty Cracker? Is that a content creator? I think so. I think I'm familiar with him. Not super familiar, but I think so. Welcome, though. Welcome to the party. Well, I'm saying it's so awesome to hear someone challenge Destiny and are beyond his capability to debate. Notice Jordan doesn't allow him to just debate, his way out of answering very important questions. Yeah, and maybe it's something that I didn't see. Because I've always told you that I have no problem admitting that as much as I disagree with Destiny, I have respect for him as a person and him as a debater. But between what we saw on Piers Morgan the other day, where he's nobody believed that, then I haven't watched it in full yet. But what I'm hearing about the Norm Finkelstein is his name, the Israel-Palestine debate, the holes are starting to show. I was brushing off indie film when he was saying, I'm walking away, but I don't know. We still got to see it. Let's see on to the mere fact that people are still wearing masks means people did believe it and still do. Yeah, obviously. Come on, obviously. Trump, we need so bad. So Destiny is all over the map. Yeah. For sure. So what I was going to say, guys, is that check this shit out. This is the Dissident Dialogues convention, I don't know what they're calling it, but going in Brooklyn, they've got all of these amazing speakers. We have Richard Dawkins, we've talked about, Ayan Hersey Ali, Konstantin Kristen from Trigonometry, Alex O'Connor, we just covered him, a whole bunch of people. And I am absolutely going. I would love if any of you guys would meet up with me there. But in order to use it as a networking opportunity to bring you guys better content, better conversations, I am, I got to go for the VIP to make sure I get, all access to everybody. So, if you would like to help that happen and bring some awesome content, that would be very, 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 very much appreciated. I'm going to call you, I'm just going to call you Trump. Shout out to the Conservative Party House, Conservative Party House over on Instagram. Welcome to the party. Trump, we need so bad, said, I like Tim Pool better than Destiny. I said, shit, me too. Don't we all? David said, if you take your time, I might be able to join you for climate discussion. Going out to eat right now. Word up. Well, that's up to you guys. Destiny Glomtech says, get some good jabs in, but I'd say most of the rounds go to Jordan. Destiny is a great debater, but a skilled psychologist can shut down his nonsense and get to the real point of the convo. Yeah, and that's why I do what I do, because I am not by any means a Jordan Peterson. But I'm coming from that same type of understanding. I mean, I do have a bachelor's degree in psychology. It's bachelor's, but it's still a degree. I still spent a lot of time studying this stuff, and also spent a lot of time studying philosophy and making sure that I understood how these people build these arguments, and to be able to almost see it as like to see it mapped out as like a math equation. And you can see like, oh, well, that doesn't fit, or there's your straw man, or there's your projection, or any of that kind of stuff. And I can't say, I can't say that it's been anything but hugely important. Conservative Party House said, you vote for Trump 2024. I said, hell yeah. First time voting for Trump. I unfortunately, as many of you guys know, wasn't really into politics for a while. And then around 2015, I started watching everything, and I thought it was going to be really smart and watch MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN to get all of the information. And then I'd really know what's going on. And so I was a Bernie bro, but of course, we saw what happened with the DNC. And shamefully, I did cast a vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016. But I've learned from my ways. No, well, hey, I want to vote. That's what the VIP is. That's what the VIP ticket is for, is to be there. Maybe the panels won't be any good, but I could definitely get some, where's my phone? I could definitely get some interviews just like this, like, oh, Senator, oh, Konstantin Kristen, oh, Alex O'Connor, whoever. We can do it. Shout out to Soil too. So welcome to the party. Said my week has been impossible. I want to make it here so much. I've missed y'all fuckers. I hope y'all been doing okay. I listened to a lot of this in the greenhouse yesterday, and JBP damn sure walked the dog shit out of Destiny. Hell yeah. He's figuring out 72 doses, 72 genders. They're turning the frogs game. Conservative Party House said, it's interesting listening to an ex-leftist. I think they're loud ones, which I like too. So I was never a leftist. I was a default liberal. Like growing up, I was always very anti-establishment, but I wasn't paying attention to politics specifically. And so I had opinions on issues and like what was right and wrong, but in terms of, the civics of who this person is, that person, I just was not involved. And the funny story, shout out to Nano P.O. Welcome to the party. When I was in college, I was walking from my friend's dorm back to my own dorm one brisk fall night, and there was a bunch of people just out in the like courtyard or whatever, just cheering, having a great time. And I'm like, what's going on? It's Wednesday or Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't know. We'll at the end of the story. And it wasn't until I got inside that I realized, oh, we just got our first black president. So that's how much I was not paying attention to stuff. But I do now. Welcome to the party, everybody. Let's dive back in.
Organizations that track excess deaths around the world.
There are many more than 3, yes, in every single European country. Right. Okay. Well, so one relatively straightforward hypothesis is that it's a consequence of the disruption of the healthcare system, the staving off of cancer treatment, etc., the increase in depression, anxiety, suicidality, and alcoholism that was a consequence of the lockdowns, the economic disruption. And there's plenty of reason to believe that some of that is the case. But the other obviously glaring possibility is that injecting billions of people with a vaccine that was not tested by any stretch of the imagination with the thoroughness that it should have before it was forced upon people also might be a contributing factor.
I mean, god damn. Bars. Let's see that one more time.
With a vaccine that was not tested by any stretch of the imagination with the thoroughness that it should have before it was forced upon people also might be a contributing factor, partly because we know that it led to a rise in myocarditis among young men. And we also know that there was absolutely no reason whatsoever to ever recommend that that vaccine was delivered to young children. So the risk of death at COVID was so close to zero that it might as well have been zero.
When you're talking about
And that was my calculus. And I think they bring this up at some point. Oh shit, I got a drop of water on my monitor. I think they bring this up at some point. But the skepticism of forcing somebody to do something is so powerful. When this all started, I was of the position that, okay, I mean, I don't really care. I never got a flu shot or anything, but okay, if this is a serious thing, then whenever it becomes just like inconvenient for me to go around and they have vaccine mandates, I'll just get it. That was my starting point. Despite having been red-pilled and not trusting the government, to any degree that I ever did, even though I never really trusted them that much to begin with, I was willing to believe that, okay, they're not just going to inject us with crazy shit. And then they did. And I was like, if this is so good, why do you need to force it? If this is so appropriate, why do you need to force it?
Whose risk of death at COVID was so close to zero that it might as well have been zero.
When you're talking about a disease, the risk of death isn't the only thing that you worry about for the disease. There's also
so you're going to talk about transmission? Because that was another thing that the COVID vaccine pushed. Yeah, but it didn't do anything to transmission.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't want to go to transmission, buddy, because again, I will say, I know this is anecdotal, but I've gotten similar anecdotal from almost every other person that I've talked to, that all of the people who've been, who got the jab, have had COVID at least twice. And the only people I know who have not ever gotten COVID are unvaxxed people, myself included. Just saying.
Absolutely did, because it decreased your chance of getting infected. It didn't get rid of transmission, but it reduced transmission.
Yeah, but it was claimed that it would get rid of
only
transmission.
If you take one reading of one single quote. I think that Biden said one time where he said, no, come
projection. This is the same thing as when he was on Piers Morgan. Nobody believed that. Like, no, Destiny. They did believe it. And you were, if nobody believed it, and you didn't believe it, you sure as shit weren't out there saying, hey, guys, this is bullshit. Hey, guys, you don't need to get the vax. Hey, guys, you shouldn't wear a mask. Hey, guys, social distancing is stupid. Where were you? Where were you? You stream 8 hours a day. And you think maybe one time that if you didn't believe this thing that's going all around the fucking world that everybody believes, not one time did you think to maybe say, oh, yeah, oh, you guys actually believe that shit? No, that's lies. Find me that clip. You cannot. You cannot. Yeah, that one line was told 1 trillion times. Over and over and over and over and over again. But yeah, nobody believed that. It was one single quote. Cope. One of us said, wait, so Destiny's trying to make it seem like things our president says should be downplayed when it comes to the pandemic? That is a fantastic precedent that he has set. So now, when the serious guy, who isn't, a jokester, when he says something, we shouldn't listen to it. But when the jokester guy comes in and is saying, this, that, and the other, we have to take him perfectly at his word.
What?
Great observation. That makes absolutely no fucking sense. Let's do it. Let's do it.
If you take one reading of one single quote, I think that Biden said one time where he said, no, come on. I've heard so many times because everybody say, oh, you can't take anything Trump says seriously. Biden one.
Right. But that is the exact point. That's not what people say about Biden. If Biden was exactly the same as Trump, then you might have an argument. But the whole issue that you have with Trump is that he does say things that he doesn't mean. He does say things in a hyperbolic manner. He does say things and act facetious and joke around. And you don't like that. So when Biden doesn't do that, which you like, now you want to say, oh, well, Trump does it, which we hate, and we've turned for the last decade, made him the most demonic person in the world. Well, Trump does it. Okay, well then I guess Trump is not that bad then. Make it make sense, bro. This part got me so angry. He doesn't even get the Biden clip correct. He said it was on the news or something. It was at the fucking presidential address. Yeah. And it wasn't, it wasn't anything. It was endless. It was countless. Monk9 said, we're supposed to take what Trump says 100% literally with the most extreme definition. You can't have it both ways, bro. Yeah, the jokester guy, you got to take him dead serious. But the guy who barely knows what he's saying is just reading off a paper from his superiors. No, he was just riffing. He was just, telling a joke. So said exactly. It's so damn confusing since coming from someone that's an alleged intellectual. Yeah, and I mean, again, this comes back to dogma. If you are operating on the dogmatic axiom that Trump is bad, and you work backwards from that, this is how you get an intelligent, smart, well-read person to say very, very stupid things. Dogma. He said, so why should we not care what Biden said that was reporting 1 trillion times, but with Trump and the J6 stuff, pick a logic to follow, Mr. Blue Hair. Yep. So the Solo said, oldie but goodie, but if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any at all. Yep.
And where he said, no, come on. I've heard so many times because everybody say, oh, you can't take anything Trump says seriously. Biden one time on the news says.
And again, I know I'm pausing at the exact same spot, but that is true. There are a lot of things that Trump says that you shouldn't take seriously, just like any normal person.
If you get the vaccine, you won't transfer the
Biden doesn't do that.
No. Do you know that our Prime Minister in Canada deprived Canadians of the right to travel for 6 months because the unvaccinated were going to transmit COVID with more likelihood than the vaccinated? So this wasn't one bloody statement. This was thorough government policy.
One statement.
Saying is there wasn't a statement given that if you get vaccinated, there's a 0% chance of transmitting the disease.
Yes, there was. Can't transmit.
I'll just say before we do that, just as a personal plea from me, if you have been putting off being vaccinated for whatever reason, don't agonize about it. Don't let anybody make you feel bad about that and get you defensive about it. Just make a fresh decision now. Take a fresh look at the issue now, looking at what's going on now, no matter why you have put it off in the past.
So this is December 2021.
No judgment. Now is the time to actually go do it, because we really cannot afford you having to go to the hospital right now. If you're unvaccinated, you have a much higher chance of getting this newly transmissible variant we had never seen before a couple of weeks ago. And it's the unvaccinated people who it's going to make sick. And we really just cannot afford for you to have to go to the hospital right now. I mean, looking all around the country, depending on where you live, there's a very good chance there's no room for you in the hospital right now if you need to go. And if you can somehow get a bed because you got COVID and you got sick from it because you weren't vaccinated, if you are able to get yourself into a bed, you're going to be filling a bed that somebody else really needs. So even if you didn't feel like you could do it before, even if you've been holding off for whatever reason, look at it freshly now. Now would be the time. Even if it wasn't okay for you before, it's okay for you to do it now. Honestly, your country needs you. And if you are vaccinated, but you haven't been boosted yet and you're eligible for your booster, make your appointment for your booster. Now's the time. And
so this might not be the clip where she actually says
the only appointment now.
Yeah, so this is the one where she 100%. But of course, YouTube is suppressing that one because that should be the first one. But she said that 100% stops in its tracks. I believe is a direct quote. So no, again, Destiny, you are wrong. Yet another example of people on the right having perfect understanding of what the people on the left think, and the people on the left having not a fucking clue what we think. I want to post it. I wonder if Destiny looked over this section of the debate and realized how stupid his argument was. I'm pretty sure he did a stream. Oh, I think he's streaming today, right? Like, I think he's streaming right now. And going over it. This is taking way too long. I thought it would be right there. Yeah, reviewing Jordan Peterson debate. Reviewing Jordan Peterson debate. So he's doing that right now. So I guess we will see that in the coming days. All right, let's dive back in here.
There wasn't a statement given that if you get vaccinated, there's a 0% chance of transmitting the disease. The idea is that vaccines were supposed to help because it reduces your hospitalization, it reduces death, and it reduces transmission, hopefully by making it so that people don't get sick or don't get sick for as long. All three of those things the vaccines did exceedingly well.
Except they didn't. Oh, look what we got! We got Nicholas Luchetti in the building. Welcome to the party. Nick, we are giving Morty a treat just because you are here. We are giving Morty a treat just because you are here, man. I know you've been through a lot recently, and you know, I hope all of that is you know, being handled as best as it can. But man, we missed you. We are so very glad that you are back. Welcome.
Hopefully by making it so that people don't get sick or don't get sick for as long. All three of those things the vaccines did exceedingly well. They continue to do that to this day, but especially for the first variant and then the Delta variant, the vaccines helped immensely here. They were tested. The myocarditis rates are like 7 out of 100,000 injections, and the myocarditis is generally acute, and it's generally not as bad as even getting the coronavirus itself, which will...
Fair point. Why does that mean that I'm not afforded the choice? You are correct. The chances of you taking the jab and dying or getting myocarditis are lower than the chances of you getting COVID and dying. Why does that mean that I am forced to make that decision? Just like we were talking, you cannot get the science, you cannot get an ought from an is. Shout out to Jonathan Williams. Welcome to the party. Good to see you. Yeah, hell yeah. We all love seeing Nick back doing well.
Injections, and the myocarditis is generally acute, and it's generally not as bad as even getting the coronavirus itself, which will lead you also to having
much worse side effect than side effects that have caused other vaccines to be taken off the market before.
But 7 out of 100,000 rate of acute myocarditis or pericarditis is not a worse side effect than any other vaccine. I think that is a completely acceptable, given that the disease itself is more likely to cause myocarditis or pericarditis.
Yes, I don't think the data suggests to support that presupposition anymore. The latest peer-reviewed studies show that that's simply not true, especially among young men.
Shout out to Mountain Man 85. Welcome to the party. So I just read an article that Biden himself said it in 2021. Yeah, he said it in 2020. He said it in 2021. He said it in 2022. He said it in January. He said it in December. He said it in March. He said it all the goddamn day. This idea that, it was just one little obscure thing that just got blown out of proportion. Well, yeah, the blown out of proportion part is what the fuck we're talking about. So, I mean, come on. There you go. The universe is bringing us all together.
Anymore. The latest peer-reviewed studies show that that's simply not true, especially among young men.
So there is an age bracket of young men where the elevated rate of myocarditis, acute myocarditis from the vaccine might have been higher, but we're talking about like 3 or 4 cases per 100,000 people. And again, myocarditis, pericarditis are generally acute conditions. They don't last for...
And again, that may be true, but I still should be allowed the choice.
I told you at the beginning of this conversation that the progressive leftists were on the side of the pharmaceutical companies.
It's not about being on the side of the pharmaceutical companies. It's about yeah.
Yeah, well, I see. So what I see as the unholy part of that alliance with the pharmaceutical companies is that it dovetails with the radical utopians' willingness to use power to impose their utopian vision.
Well, then what do you make of the fact
otherwise, how would you explain it? Because the leftists should have been the ones that were most skeptical about the bloody pharmaceutical companies.
Bingo. The leftists should have been the one that were the most skeptical, and they just ate it up They just ate it up like it was nothing.
Explain it, because the leftists should have been the ones that were most skeptical about the bloody pharmaceutical companies. And they jumped on the vaccine bandwagon in exactly the same way that you're doing right now.
Pharmaceutical companies have helped us tremendously throughout the...
Right, there we go. Fine. No,
So there you go. It's like, just, you don't have to hide it. If you trust these people, then just say that you trust these people. That's fine. We can argue on whether or not you should or should not trust these people. But don't pretend like you're being skeptical when you're not. You're not. MLC9 said Destiny doesn't know what acute means. Guanzag said the argument always comes back to basically it's our fault, the purebloods, that we let everyone take something so wrong so seriously. It's never their fault. Yep. I mean, they're allergic to accountability. It's like, can you at least just acknowledge that even if it was stupid and it was even if you want to call every pureblood a pussy, you're so scared of this, that was a real fear. I'm not trying to act like I'm tough because I'm a pureblood. I'm a pureblood because I was fucking scared. I was fucking terrified of what these people were willing to do. Is that not a reasonable position based on all of the lies that you say were out there, but nobody believed?
Doing right
Pharmaceutical
now.
companies have helped us tremendously throughout the...
Right, there we go. Fine. No, I
modern
don't
medicine
think
has
so.
it.
No, I don't think so.
You're just wrong.
That makes Destiny more of a cuck than letting his wife get fucked by other dudes.
You're
utterly
wrong.
I see. So you don't think that the pharmaceutical companies who dominate the advertising landscape with 75% of the funding are corrupt?
I don't... Corrupt is a...
Corrupt. Yes, corruption. That's what the fuck we're talking about. I love that JVP immediately hones in on the fact that Destiny is just appealing to authority. It's like, yep, there it is. That's all I need to know about why you think this way. Exactly. Oh, shit. Destiny reaching Adam 22 levels. Oh, God. Yeah, articles wailing about why did nobody tell us about these side effects? It's like, I mean, we did. You just weren't listening. So this also, I don't see how anyone can trust these pharmaceutical companies at this point. So climate studies by big oil equals bad because money corrupts, but vax studies by big pharma equals good. Make it make sense. Yeah, I can't. I wish I could. 75%
of the funding are corrupt.
I don't... Corrupt is a very broad...
No, it's...
Do you think that
corrupt with a tinge of malevolence?
Do you think
willing to extract money out of people by putting their health on the line? Do you don't believe that?
Do you think that we...
Very specific. Willing to extract money by putting their health on the line. That has been pharmaceuticals for the entirety of medical science. I just rewatched, if you haven't seen it, I think it's just called Painkiller, but the story of Purdue Pharma. And as somebody who was an oxy addict, it was super triggering to watch. But the story of how they just did not fucking care. They knew it was addictive. They knew it would kill people. And I'm not saying it's their fault that I made those decisions. What I'm saying is it's their fault that I was put in a position where it was so easy for me to make that decision.
Willing to extract money out of people by putting their health on the line. Do you don't believe that?
Do you think that we get effective drugs from pharmaceutical companies?
Yeah. I think yes, but I don't think the number of what do you say, effective the number of effective drugs we get from pharmaceutical companies is not a rebuttal to the point that Peterson is making, because the number of ineffective drugs is way too high for the number of effective drugs to be the end all be all. And that is why each individual drug needs to be measured and verified on its own merit in the right timing. I was gonna, oh my God, what exactly do you mean by corrupt? There are many interpretations of corrupt. Nice try changing the subject. I will always give the benefit of the doubt to asking for a clarification of a definition. Sometimes it's like, okay, dude, you're just, well, what does that mean? What do you mean? What is the meaning of is? It depends on what the meaning of is. Like, okay, we're but it's right here. What do you mean? They got you. But yeah, I think in terms of asking for clarification, maybe a tactic, but I do think it's fair if he was just asking. Let's see on to the Purdue story is heartbreaking. And so is the story behind Vioxx. They knew it would cause heart attacks. I'm not familiar. What is Vioxx? But yeah, I mean, like, without, like, there's so many. One thing said Destiny is trying to drag the conversation away from corrupt pharmaceutical companies to what is the meaning of corrupt. Yep.
Their health on the line.
Do you
don't believe that?
Do you think that we get effective drugs from pharmaceutical companies?
Not particularly.
Okay. Do you think that any vaccines work?
Yes.
Do you think that any...
I don't think 80 of them work.
I said shit. Me too. You can have these nuanced positions and stand on your fucking business. I don't trust Big Pharma. Vaccines work, but we don't need 80 of them for children. This is what nuance does. It's not just, well, Big Pharma good or Big Pharma bad? Fauci good or Fauci bad? Biden good or Biden bad? Trump good or Trump bad?
Do you think that any vaccines work?
Yes.
Do you think that any...
I don't think 80 of them work at once for babies. I think that's a little risky.
But yet we've been on this vaccine schedule for how many decades?
Like
and babies
this.
Don't...
Oh, yeah. So because we've been doing something bad for a long time, that means that it's now good.
What? Stupid. Like this. Not like this. Not carefully.
I had a ton of vaccines when
Zippy, what is this? What is this?
Like this. Not like this. Not carefully.
I had a ton of vaccines when I was a child. I'm pretty sure that was the norm for people. There were a ton of vaccines.
There's way more now.
Yep, and like MSC9 said, it's 72, and for the again the time frame, even if it's all the way up to 18 years old, that's still multiple. Don't get me started. And I hate that we're at a position where Jenny McCarthy has a point that we need to, okay, maybe, they're not actively trying to turn your kid autistic or, all right, let's see it. But there's something here. And I was somebody who and my dad as well, who would scoff at anti-vaxxers because of the perception that, these things would spread and for the average reasons. But then the coercion completely changed the landscape. Because I believe it only makes sense if you actually think you can completely trust any politician, right, left, or anywhere in between. I think the only question is how corrupt they are. Bingo. Yep. Exactly. Yep. Yep. Anecdotes. Well, I turned out fine, so it must be fine. So because 11 of us wants to know what the definition of is. They have more grammar issues than Zippy. MX9 said the schedule began to grow after 1986 when Big Pharma got liability-free status. Well, it makes a lot more sense now, don't it? I was born in 89, so I probably got a given the parabolic nature, I probably got a significant number more vaccines than you guys, but exponentially less than like a Zoomer. Insane.
Vaccines when I was a child. I'm pretty sure that was the norm for people. There were a ton of vaccines.
There's way more now.
Okay. And you think
you can understand why. I mean, look, part of it, no doubt, part of it is a consequence of the genuine willingness to protect children. But the moral hazard is quite clear, and people on the left used to be aware of this.
Mm-hmm. And again, perfectly said. That obviously, the easy answer is that, well, we care about the kids. We want to make sure that these kids can grow up healthy and not get these sicknesses. But if you're not willing to question, like, okay, well, is this actually helping make that happen? You're just trusting that, oh, they said they're trying to help the kids. So obviously they're helping the kids.
What do you make of the fact? Where do you think the mRNA vaccine, the speeding up of it, came from? How do you make for the fact that it was Donald Trump that did warp speed?
Terror, foolish panicking, just like we're doing with the climate issue.
Yup. And I mean, again, this is a faulty line of argumentation because most of us are like Trump. Shut the fuck up about the vaccine. You did a great job. Scientifically, it was fast. It was amazing. There's no questioning that Project Warp Speed was an amazing feat of medical science. Nobody can deny that. That doesn't mean that we should be forced to take the vaccine. Pre-70s hospitals couldn't even advertise. Makes sense. Makes sense. So we got the 70s, then we got 86, and here we are. One of us, oh, poor Destiny. He's not someone he can bully back into backing down. And now he's stumped. Yep, with another whataboutism.
Terror, foolish panicking, just like we're doing with the climate issue.
So you think Trump was
panicking?
Was he in bed with the pharmaceuticals? Was he working with the left, or was it just a dumb? That was the only panicky thing he made. He did.
What?
I don't think I even need to say anything. This is, bro. You are so far on your heels. I wish I had a way to finish that sentence other than you're really running backwards.
Was he in bed with the pharmaceuticals? Was he working with the left, or was it just a dumb? That was the only panicky thing he made. He didn't try to push for the mass lockdowns like other far left people would have wanted him to do. That was just the one mistake he made, was the pushing for the vaccine.
So he just laid out. So what you just saw was him laying out 6 different disconnected things. So that
no, I think
so that 6 disconnected things that don't really make sense. So that JVP doesn't have any one thing to debunk. Now he's got 6 questions on the board that he needs to deal with. Debate tactics. Debate tactics. If you are using these to bolster a valid point, then that's one thing. The problem is that who decides what is worth being a good point, or what what point is worth being a little shisty, if we won't say. But it's a delicate dance, and this ain't graceful.
Like other far left people would have wanted him to do. That was just the one mistake he made, was the pushing for the vaccine.
No, I think Trump undoubtedly made all sorts of mistakes.
I said shit. Me too. Does anybody here think that Trump only made one mistake? Of course not. Straw man. 168. God, I would love to see a point-by-point debate breakdown on this one. Going to be super interesting. Well, yeah, I'm really excited to see what because I mean, obviously Peterson is going to say that, but depending on what Destiny says about this, I might cover that as a members only, because this is in the weeds. And remember, this is only one part of the debate.
It's just the one mistake he made, was the pushing for the vaccine.
No, I think Trump undoubtedly made all sorts of mistakes, and it certainly wasn't only the left that stampeded toward the forced COVID vaccine debacle. But it was most surprising to me that it emerged on the left, because the left at least had been protected against the depredations of gigantic predatory corporations by their skepticism of the gigantic enterprises that can engage in regulatory capture, and that just vanished.
Is it not possible that maybe people looked and they said, hey, if all the governments, all the institutions, all the schools, all the private companies across all the countries around the world are saying the same thing?
Yeah.
There it is. Again, there it is. Well, all of the people who say what it is are saying what it is. So they can't all be wrong unless they were working together or something. Maybe like it was like a conspiracy or something. Yeah, bro. Oh, just live for one day. For one day. Just live in the shoes, thinking that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all of these things that, everybody's agreeing on the same exact thing, even though it's a novel virus and we don't know anything and every different treatments and that and everything. But everybody's saying the same thing. Well, they must be right. Just go the other way. Go the other way for 1 second. Shout out to Gridiron Masters. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. So online debaters usually never recap their performance by saying they got whipped. Well, that's not what I'm expecting at all. But if he is, so he is right at this moment, going over this. And so depending on how that stream plays out, I may want to cover that in terms of, see Destiny coping over himself kind of thing. And I think that would be fun. But welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. And shout out to Unwanted Foe with another $2 super chat. And of course, every donation comes with a treat for my co-host, Morty. You gotta eat it, man. Come on. Can't reach any further. Thank you, thank you, thank you so very much. Out sponsoring himself. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Institutions, all the schools, all the private companies across all the countries around the world are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it is the case that this vaccine just helps. Is that not possible?
Oh, sure. That's sure. Of course it's possible, but that didn't mean it was right.
Well,
they used force. They used force.
We use force for all sorts of things in terms of public
We don't
health.
generally.
I think he's about to say it, right? Not for, injecting things into your body. It's totally fine to force people to put things in their body.
What? Come on, man.
Used force.
Well,
they used force.
We use force for all sorts of things in terms of public health.
We don't generally use force to invade people's bodies.
How long have vaccine mandates been a thing in Canada, the United States, and the entire world?
I don't think they should have been a thing.
That's great if you don't think they should have been, but when you say we don't generally use force, we absolutely use force. We use...
The fact that we already have bad policies is not an excuse to pile on more bad policy. Like, yes, he's right that physical force is a part of the way society works. That doesn't mean it's good. Just saying this is what it is not a response to, okay, well, what do we do with that? Is that actually a good thing? Context said the answer to why we should be angry about the coup reaction is exactly in the question Destiny is asking. If all institutions are begging something that's obviously wrong, it's probably a conspiracy. Probably. There's levels to this shit. There's levels to this shit. I say that all the time, and I am constantly reminded that there are levels to this shit. That, yeah, in online debate sphere, Destiny is a king. But you get out into the world of actual, real intellectuals who not only read the science, meaning the scientific papers, but who read science and understand the science, but are not ideologically bent, or at least aware of their ideological bias to be able to look past it, then you realize that, yes, it's not hard to pull up a study that says what you think it says. It's not hard to pull up a study that says what you want it to say. What's hard is to understand that, well, the study that says what you want it to say, is it a good study? Are there other studies that debunk this? Are there, so on and so forth. And so when we are talking about cultural issues specifically, we're talking about personal opinions about how people want to live, your appeal to numbers ain't really a thing. Like, yes, it is relevant. But again, you cannot get an ought from an is. Science tells us what is. It is philosophy that tells us what we ought to do. Philosophy or religion, or I put that in the same category. And there is no scientific process to philosophy. So trying to use that is a false thing that meant I hate grouping all atheists together as an atheist, but specifically this point on using science to derive, well, this is true and this is true and this is true, therefore we should do that. That can work for you personally. But when we talk about legislation and we talk about society, it can't work that way. It can't work that way. M69 said in here, Destiny just doesn't have all the facts. All but one state has at least religious, medical, and philosophical exemptions. California only has medical, and no doctor will give one. Surprise, surprise. Some of all three, but most have at least two. Yeah, I didn't know that. Nick said, what happened to the sayings, two wrongs don't make a right? Still holds true to me, but, you know, if you're looking through these coof-tinted glasses...
Being a thing.
That's great if you don't think they should have been, but when you say we don't generally use force, we absolutely use force. We've enforced vaccines for a long time. It's an important part of public health.
Fair enough. We did it on a scale and at a rate during the COVID pandemic, so-called pandemic, that was unparalleled. And the consequence of that was that we injected billions of people with an experimental, and it wasn't a bloody vaccine. No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
It's
What,
not.
because it have a 100% success rate? You think it's a definition of vaccine?
What?
I guarantee you, that is not at all the point that JVP is going to make. I don't know what point he's going to make, but I can guarantee you it's not that.
It isn't.
Yes, it is.
It's
What,
not.
because it have a 100% success rate? You think it's a definition of vaccine? Well, the point of the vaccine is to give your body a protein
It's
to
not
train
the
on so that your
same
immune system works.
technology.
Who cares if it's not the same? There's
They
different
used
types
the word
of...
vaccine so that they didn't have to contend with the fact that it wasn't the same technology.
There are different types of vaccines
There certainly
that are
and
different technologies.
Fine.
The mRNA vaccines is a type
This
of
used to
vaccine
be
technology.
vaccines. Now this is vaccines.
No, it was like this and now it's like this.
No. It was like this and now it's like this. The mRNA technology was a radical qualitative leap forward in technology.
Yup. Gridiron Master says the inability to truly consider being wrong results in sophistry. And that's why debaters like Destiny and others on all sides can be fatiguing. Phallic warfare. Yeah, I mean, it all just turns, and this is all the fucking time, guys. Stop trying to win the argument and just have the conversation. If you believe in your positions, then you don't need to force them down anybody's throat. Just be right. If you're right, just be right. It's fun. It's great. You don't have to remember stuff. You don't have to jump around and be thinking about, oh, what am I going to handle it? Just be right. Just know the right things. And when you turn out to be wrong, change your fucking mind. It's not hard. Well, actually, it is hard. The humility is hard, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. I want to focus on the constant definition change. Classic lefties tactic 101. Semantic obfuscation. Yep, he's unimpressed.
Was a radical qualitative leap forward in technology. You can call it a vaccine if you want to, but it bears very little resemblance to any vaccine that went before that. And the reason it was called a vaccine was because vaccine was a brand name that had a track record of safety.
Which is why, again, the anti-vax of today is a very different thing than the Jenny McCarthy anti-vax.
And shoehorning it in that was one of the ways to make sure that people weren't terrified of the technology. And
I think the reason it's called a vaccine is because they're injecting you with something that's inoculating you against something in the future because it has proteins that resemble a virus that infects
there
your
are
immune system
overlaps
training against.
between the mRNA technologies and vaccines, to be sure. But they wouldn't have been put forward with the rate that they were put forward if they weren't a radical new technology. And it's bad in principle to inject billions of people with an untested new technology.
Isn't it?
Yeah, so it says it was a new technology. mRNA isn't traditional vax. JVP is exactly right here. No matter how much Destiny doesn't want him to be, Destiny is ideologically captured by his trust in the system. So I don't think that mRNA is new technology. But it certainly wasn't used. We've had mRNA technology for. So when was mRNA discovered? So yeah, the early 60s. This is a messenger RNA. I always mess that up. mRNA was discovered in the early 60s. Research into how mRNA could be delivered into cells was developed in the 70s. So why did it take the blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so the technology itself is not new. But yes, exactly. It's new for a vaccine use. Exactly. And so that's the subtle thing that you know is a very important distinction. You know, often we talk about a distinction without a difference. That's not a distinction without a difference. 60-year-old, 50-year-old technology is not new technology. The use of old technology is new.
Principle to inject billions of people with an untested new technology.
Isn't it also bad in principle for billions of people to get infected with a worldwide pandemic that initially was causing a decent number of deaths, a ton of complications, shutting down world economies?
Come on, bro. Shout out to Michael Magnucator in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Always good to see ya.
Maybe
Initially was causing a decent number of deaths, a ton of complications, shutting down world economies.
maybe it was. Maybe it was.
So shouldn't we be
It
able to
looks
engage
like
in that analysis and figure out, like, if we look at the
we're
side
not
effects of
engaging in the
No,
analysis.
because now we're talking about whether or not
pretending
vaccines
nothing
or even
happened.
vaccines or not instead.
No, don't play that game. That is not what I was doing. I was making a very specific and careful case. The mRNA technology, by wide recognition, is an extraordinarily novel technology. And
That doesn't make
call
it not a vaccine, though.
Well, okay, it's a radically transformed form of vaccine. I don't give a damn.
Yeah, see, this is again this isn't semantic obfuscation. This is just arguing semantics. And yeah, COVID didn't shut down the world economies. The government did that. The government did that. And they did not need to. They did not need to. And especially if we were in the, well, I don't really know, maybe we should shut, 2 weeks to slow the spread. That would have been fine. There's nothing so permanent as a temporary government institution. Except I'd rather admit I was wrong than live in a delusion. It's not fun being wrong, but it's something everyone has been in the position at some point. Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, it's all ego. It's all ego. I mean, the notion that you're always right about everything and that if you're ever wrong, you're bad and now you have no value seems to be like a subconscious thought of a lot of people, that I have to be right all the time, 100%. Like, no, like I'm fucking stupid. Like I'm gonna be wrong about a lot of things a lot of times. But I promise that when I find out that I'm wrong about those things, I will let you know, hey guys, I was wrong about this, and this is what I think now. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Gonzix and Destiny is using Vosh's technique of water isn't always water. Sometimes it's I didn't see the full context of that. I saw that shout out to Willie Mack in the two videos that Willie Mack has done about Vosh. I saw that clip come up sometime, but was that literally him trying to have a semantic debate, like unironically? Because cringe. So that I think most of us are good with the 2 weeks. After that, authoritarian tyranny, plain and simple. Even fascism, the way the big box stores were allowed to stay open, but mom and pop stores weren't. Yeah. Biggest wealth transfer in the history of America. It's all good, right? It's all good. Pandemic amnesty, says the Atlantic.
Okay, it's a radically transformed form of vaccine. I don't give a damn. That still makes it something so new that the potential danger of its mass administration was highly probable to be at least or more dangerous than the thing that it was supposed to protect against.
And even if now, in hindsight, we know for a fact that it wasn't, that doesn't change the fact that at the point when it was introduced, we didn't know. It's easy for you to now say, well, nobody got myocarditis and nobody got this or that, which is not true, but it's easier for you to sit back and say, oh, there was the point is you didn't know that. You didn't know that. And yet you were still advocating people to potentially ruin and destroy their lives. Yeah, 2 weeks was deal. What we ended up was terrifying. I mean, I honestly didn't think that we could ever get there. And I mean, if that's not red pilling, if that's not like, oh wow, it's not just like, people are going to argue about different stuff and people are going to say things that, I don't like. And, there might be some policies I don't totally agree with. No, it's much bigger than that. It's much bigger than that.
East or more dangerous than the thing that it was supposed to protect against. And we are seeing that in the excess deaths.
Absolutely not. So are you implying none of the excess deaths were caused by the vaccines? Or
I don't bloody well know what they're caused by
now.
See, no, he's not. He's saying there are two things that may or may not be connected. So maybe it's not connected, but it might be, and you're claiming it's not. So based on what evidence are you saying it's not connected? I'm not claiming they're connected. I'm saying here are two things that are happening, and it would make sense that maybe they could be connected. But for you, because that would destroy your narrative. No, that didn't happen. How do you know? How do you know? You don't.
Well, were caused by the vaccines, or
I don't bloody well know what they're
that's what you're
caused by.
implying now.
Well, look, if you're going to use Occam's razor, you're kind of stuck in an awkward place here.
Does anybody not know what Occam's razor is?
Absolutely not stuck in it. This is the most administered vaccine of the or inoculation, or whatever you prefer to call it, in the history of all of mankind. Every single organization around the world is motivated to call this out if it was a bad thing. You don't think Russia or China would be screaming if Donald Trump or the United States warp sped through a vaccine that was having deleterious effects on populations all around the world? You don't think there wouldn't be some academic institution? You didn't think there'd be more than a handful of doctors and Joe Rogan and some conservatives saying this vaccine might have been bad if it was the case that American companies working with companies in Europe and Germany especially, right, because that's where BioNTech is from, in order to create or manufacture a vaccine that was causing excess deaths all around the world? There are so many different people that we motivated to call this out. How do you explain
it out?
No, it's a handful of people. Where are the governments calling it? Where are the academic institutions calling it? Where are the other private companies calling it out? Wouldn't you stand to make a killing if you were a private company in Europe and you could say, look, the mRNA vaccines for sure are causing all of these issues?
But that's not the point that anybody is making. That's not what anybody is saying. Nobody's saying for sure that you're making that jump. Shout out to Soul with a $10 cash app set for Morty, and you must eat good. Indeed. Speaking of which, knocking unwanted foe out and becoming the new sponsor of the stream. Thank you so very, very, very much. I love you guys. You are blessing me. Thank you so very, very much. As always, guys, I know we got a couple comments here, but when I get a donation, I love to jump back in. Thank you, Soil2So.
Wouldn't you stand to make a killing if you were a private company in Europe and you could say, look, the mRNA vaccines for sure are causing all of these issues? Why wouldn't Putin, why wouldn't Xi Jinping, why wouldn't anybody else in the world call this out? It was as horrible as it was.
There are plenty of people attempting to call
nobody credible and no huge institution.
Nobody credible, according to who?
What do you make of the excess deaths? You haven't come up with a bloody hypothesis.
I don't even know if there are 20% at the excess deaths in Europe right now. If I had to guess off the top of my head, it's going to be, like you said, one might be lingering effects of an overall healthcare system. Another one might be deaths related to the war in Ukraine. Another one might be rising energy costs that have happened for a couple of reasons.
But it's absolutely impossible that any of it could be unintended consequences of a novel technology injected into billions of people.
I think that if excess, first of all, there aren't billions of people in Europe. So if there were excess deaths, I understand, but you're talking about excess deaths in Europe. I'm not aware of excess deaths that exist in other places that are completely and totally unaccounted for, where the only explanation would be the vaccine. I think if there were, I think more people would be talking about it.
Well, first of all, the number of people talking about something is not an indication of the scientific validity of a claim.
I agree with that, but for a vaccine,
then why are you using mass consensus as the determinant of what constitutes truth?
And this is something that Destiny himself will point out. He'll be in an argument and somebody will bring up something and be like, okay, well, even if I give you this, will it change your position? And they say no. It's like, okay, so then why are we arguing about it? And now you're sitting here doing the same exact thing. So either you're not aware that you're doing the same things that you call out, which is its own thing, not the worst thing in the world, but definitely something that you should be aware of, that you're not aware of the things that you call other people out on, or you are purposely trying to muddy the waters with stupid bullshit to try to save face. Yeah, he's saying we have to find out why. If Destiny would ever let him get it out. Like, well, how do you know? It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And how many people said they wouldn't take it when Trump was president? Yep, including a lot of our politicians.
Are you using mass consensus as the determinant of what constitutes truth?
I think for
That's never been the case.
Because I think for something that was given to billions and billions of people, if this was something that was having a measurable effect on people, it would be impossible to cover it up or ignore it. Well, we wouldn't have to look at the one case brought up on a documentary. We wouldn't have to look at the one thing being talked about.
And what do you make of the VAERS data? There's more negative side effects reported from the mRNA vaccines than there were reported for every single vaccine ever created since the dawn of time.
That's a lot. But I'm sure he's got some canned answer.
And not by a small margin. So it's not just the excess deaths.
I agree.
It's the VAERS data.
What is VAERS data?
What? Oh, hell no.
Did he just ask what is VAERS data? What is it? The vaccine error and something. Okay, it's where you report vaccine injuries. What is VAERS data? Is he okay? Maybe he's asking what is the VAERS data that you're referring to. Maybe that's what he meant. I am hoping. If it is 2024 and this motherfucker doesn't know what VAERS is, we are in. Where's any film? This might be my walking away from Destiny moment. I'm scared. I feel like I'm watching a wise uncle talk to his knowledgeable nephew who can't control his need to be right. Just have the conversation, young one. Yep. Kamala said she wouldn't. Everyone on CNN, MSNBC, they all said, I'll wait. But I'm the asshole for not wanting to, right? Crazy. So I don't know if you get to the climate change portion of the debate, but we'll get there. We're coming up on it. We'll get there. But oh my God, that was entertaining. Yeah, well, we'll get there. We gonna make it. I can see it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm just wondering, does he know? And so again, I can see him asking the question, meaning, well, what data specifically from VAERS are you talking about that you're referring to? But that's scary. If that's not the case, then yeah, it goes to the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing tomatoes don't go in fruit salad. Fixed it for you. Got it. I got it. There you go.
By a small margin. So it's not just the excess deaths.
I agree.
It's the VAERS data.
What is VAERS data?
It's the database that until the COVID-19 pandemic emerged and we had the unfortunate consequence that there were so many side effects being reported, it was the gold standard for determining whether or not vaccines were safe.
You saw it. Roll back the fucking tape. I am here in good faith. I am in search of truth and what will help this country. And I said, oh, no. I mean, Destiny, obviously, after all of this time, can't possibly know about the vaccine adverse event reporting system. Where's indie film when you need him? I think that I'm hanging on by a thread. Nobody believed that. What is VAERS? Shout out to Aaron Z. Welcome to the party. Said it's a good point though, but it's only a good point because the answer is too terrible to say out loud. What's a good point? I'm lost. But welcome to the party, and let me know what you're talking about. Welcome. He doesn't know what it is, but he can debunk it. Yep. So it said, how can you honestly argue vax injury whatsoever and not know what VAERS is? It's insanity. Yeah, no, I have nothing to add to that. You are absolutely right. Shout out to Trey Williams. Welcome to the party. So a lot of people on the right are full of shit because during the Trump term, when he was talking about the vaccine, people that weren't anti-vaccine were willing to take it. But when Joe got in office, it changed. I addressed this right before you got here. That's me. You talking about me. I said at the beginning of this, with the COVID stuff, that, okay, I've never gotten a flu vaccine, a flu shot or this, that's not really my style. But, I'm sure that eventually, they're going to have it for, events and restaurants like they eventually did. And in the beginning, I was saying, okay, whenever it becomes inconvenient for me, I'll just go and take it, whatever. Like it's whatever. But then they had all this fucking crazy coercion shit that JBP is about to talk about. And like I said, I got scared. I don't feel like I'm cool or better. I was scared. I was terrified. And so I didn't want to take the vaccine. So, I mean, definitely people are full of shit all over the political spectrum, but there's a reason for this. There is a very clear reason for this. Welcome to the party.
effects being reported. It was the gold standard for determining whether or not vaccines were safe. And now, as soon as it started to misbehave on the mRNA vaccine front, we decided that we were going to doubt the validity of the VAERS reporting system.
Okay, the VAERS reporting system never been the gold standard for anything. VAERS reporting is just if you want to report that there is some issue that you have after getting a vaccine.
Okay, holy shit. Holy shit. Okay, all right. That I was originally right when I gave him the benefit of the doubt. All right. That was going to be a bombshell. Wow. Okay. So he does know what VAERS is. All right. Fair enough.
Vaccine front, we decided that we were going to doubt the validity of the VAERS reporting system.
Okay, the VAERS reporting system never been the gold standard for anything. VAERS reporting is just if you want to report that there is some issue that you have after getting a vaccine. That's it. I think it's vaccine adverse.
What the hell do you think it was set up for?
Yeah, right. That's what the fuck we're talking about. Adverse effects from a vaccine. All it does is tell you that there's effects from the vaccine. Yeah.
Report adverse events that happen after a vaccine to track and see if something was related to the vaccine.
Right.
So most people didn't even know VAERS existed until after the COVID vaccine.
Is that projection? No, it's not. But even so, why is that? What does that even mean? Nobody knew what VAERS. Yeah. Oh, people are so stupid because they're not keeping up with vaccine adverse effects response systems.
What?
Get off your high horse. Jesus fucking Christ.
So most people didn't even know VAERS existed until after the COVID vaccine. Once people know that it exists, of course, more people are going to engage with it. But what happens?
So it's all noise.
No, it could be or it couldn't be. So what do you do when a bunch of stuff?
Well, you first of all might begin by suggesting that maybe it's not all noise.
Correct. So when all of these things are admitted to VAERS, what they do is from there they investigate. All you can do, all VAERS is I might go and get a vaccine, and maybe in 3 days ago, I got a headache. I'm going to go ahead and like call my doctor and make this report. And they'll say, okay, well, it's an adverse event after vaccine. Doesn't mean.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure what point you think you're making. Even if we want to go all the way down to the idea that, all right, well, if you're telling me that as a young, relatively healthy person, that if I do get COVID, that it's very, 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 very unlikely that I die. I'm going to be sick for a few days, might lose my smell and taste, but, I'll be fine. I want to prevent that. So I get the vaccine. But the side effects of the vaccine are damn near the same as getting the actual virus and doesn't give you natural immunity. So why wouldn't I just take my chances with the virus? Because even though, are you telling me, like, even if we acknowledge that the risk factor of the vaccine is 10 times lower than the risk factor of COVID itself, the risk factor of compared against all other things in life, they're right both down here. So if either of them can make me sick and are not likely to make me to die, or not likely to kill me, I'm just going to do that. Is the only, that makes sense. How does that not make sense? And then it's not for you, it's for other people. Like, I'm sorry, that's not how, what happened to my body, my choice? I missed this other one, right? Gonzaga, this is still a shit tactic from Destiny. Dug a small hole and how your opponent keeps digging. These tactics don't work on people smarter than you. Apparently, if you want to report an adverse reaction, it has to be verified and signed off by our institution. M69 said, I give him credit for knowing. However, he still gives it no credibility. Oh, and by the way, they don't actually investigate shit. I can say that confidently. HHS is supposed to report to Congress every 2 years on this data. They have never prepared their reports. Not one since 1989 when they were to begin. But trust the science. Trust the establishment. Trust the doctors. Trust everybody in the fucking world who doesn't have a clue what the fuck they're doing or saying. Gridiron Masters says, when the WF and groups like it get all giddy about a crisis and start pulling out their solutions to transform the world, I begin to doubt their solutions. Smart man. Smart man. All right, we got it.
I got a headache. I'm going to go ahead and like call my doctor and make this report. And they'll say, okay, well, it's an adverse event after vaccine. Doesn't mean the vaccine caused the headache. And now that more people know about this system than ever,
I'm saying
I'm
that
just saying that theirs is not the gold standard of determining if a vaccine is working or not.
What?
Compared to actual longitudinal, perspective, randomized control trial studies.
So I mean, I don't know what he's about to jump off with that, but we don't have those things for the COVID vaccine. So whatever argument you're going to make, we don't have that. So based on the logic that you're putting out, it would make sense not to trust the vaccine. The longitudinal perspective in a randomized control trial has not happened.
Compared to actual longitudinal perspective, randomized control trial
You
studies.
mean like the ones they should have done to the goddamn vaccine?
Like the ones that they did do for...
Oh, wrong one.
I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? Because I told you. And when did I tell you?
So they exempted themselves from liability. So I suppose they think there isn't a point in reporting. Imagine that. Compared to respond to that. Own. Like, no. You're not doing it. You can do that to your friends on Discord. But you with the big boys now. You with the big boys now, brother. His blind trust in the vaccine makes no sense. His blind trust in all of the things he blindly trusts make no sense. They make no sense. This is the core issue. Why are you trusting these things that make no sense? And uno reverse, Christians, y'all on the same shit. So if you can see it here, maybe, just think about how you might be Destiny in a different conversation. You might be how Destiny is in a different conversation.
For the vaccines, and they continue to do this day. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
You really
correct.
think that you're in a position to evaluate the scientific credibility of the trials for the vaccines, do you?
No,
Really?
I don't. So I have to trust.
Then what are you
I
doing?
have to do, what
I don't trust that. I looked at the bloody data.
First of all, you have to trust third parties to some extent. When you go outside,
I don't have
to trust shit. I don't have to trust shit. Get the fuck out of. You have to trust third party. No, I don't. Look at me. Ready? This is my not trusting face. That's me not trusting any fucking person who is obviously and clearly lying to me.
I looked at the bloody data.
First of all, you have to trust third parties to some extent. When you go outside,
I don't have to trust.
Of course you do. You do every day. When you turn the keys in your car, you.
Okay, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. He chooses to believe that Audi or Toyota or whatever the fucking brand is going to deliver a car that is going to work. Why? Because over the last 50, 70, 80, however fucking many years that these companies have been around, that's what they do. That, sir, is the science.
You hope your engine doesn't explode when you're.
No. Well, yes, but the hope of my engine not exploding and my hope that I don't get adverse reactions are not the same level of hope. It's not the same thing. That is a terrible, horrible, very bad, no good analogy.
I looked at the bloody data. First of all, you have to trust third parties to some extent. When you go outside,
I don't have to trust.
Of course you do. You do every day. When you turn the keys in your car, you hope your engine doesn't explode. When you're drinking water, you hope that the public water or whatever tap or bottled water you got it out of isn't contaminated or poisoned.
Choose to do those things.
With cholera.
I don't do that as a consequence of consensus.
No, you of course you do.
No, I don't. I do that as a consequence of observing multiple times that when I put the goddamn key in the ignition, the truck started.
What?
Like the exact same thing. The reason I trust that when I let go of the vape that it's going to fall is not because people are saying, oh, you know, if you let go of a vape, it's going to fall. It's because every fucking single time that I've let go of it before, you know what it's done? That is absolutely faith. That is faith. All science breaks down. We don't have a certainty on anything, so all science breaks down to faith at some point. But there are levels to this shit. The faith I have that gravity will continue to work as it has always worked is not the same fucking thing as these people who are obviously lying to me are lying to me for good reasons, and I should trust them to protect me. Or that there's a fucking God in the sky.
consequence of observing multiple times that when I put the goddamn key in the ignition, the truck started.
Why do you know it's going to start the 50th or the 100th time? Why? How many times do you wear the?
With me,
I'm
you know
not
perfectly
playing
well
Hume.
why.
You don't know if the denim in those jeans isn't leaking into your bloodstream to some extent.
We don't know if her brain's in a vat. We don't even know if we're real people. You don't know if I'm a real person, bro. Okay, Chester.
And we trust.
Chester, if you're watching some, that was a joke.
We have to trust third-party institutions to make
Except when they
determination.
use force. How about
Especially
that?
when they use force. We trust the police officers. We trust the
We
judicial
do.
systems.
We do. We on the left
I mean,
trust the police. Do
to
we?
some extent, do we? If somebody's breaking
That's
into your
why we
house, who do you
defund
call?
them.
yeah, right? Like, we defund the people we trust.
I'm not a defunder, but if somebody's breaking into your house, you can be the most defund person in the world. Who are you going to call? Are you going to call your neighbor? Are you going to call Joe Biden? Are you going to call Obama? Are you going to call the Black Panthers? You're going to call the
Okay,
cops.
so tell me.
Or if I lived in a state where I wasn't oppressed by the government, I wouldn't call nobody and fucking, can I say that? Use my pew pew. Yeah, real bad example there.
Your neighbor? Are you going to call Joe Biden? Are you going to call Obama? Are you going to call the Black Panthers? You're going to.
And I mean, even as a lefty, motherfucker has a shotgun hanging in the back of his setup. So you're not gonna fucking call the cops. You're gonna handle your own shit. Rules for thee, but not for me. Another peek into the mentality of this man who thinks that he is better than you. He is better than you in his mind.
Call the cops.
Okay, so tell me this. Tell me this then, because the core issue here is use of force, as far as I'm concerned. You know, we examined some of the weeds around that. Politicians throughout the world, and this would be true on the conservative side now, in the aftermath of the COVID tyranny, because it was more a tyranny than a pandemic,
Okay.
are now saying that we actually didn't force anybody to take the vaccine. So what do you think of that?
We didn't force anybody. You got the choice. You just, you could choose to lose your job and not make any money and never go outside your house. That's not forcing.
Claim. Like, so let's define force.
I think it's
Because in
technically
Canada-
true, but I think it's silly.
What do you mean it's technically true? Define
Technically
force.
true,
Technically, they did force you, but I don't care, so I am going to call it silly.
and that in the United States, at least, I think the idea, what they tried to do, they weren't able to do
Trying to do
it because the Supreme Court shot it down, was Biden tried to make it so that OSHA, who's the body that regulates job safety, could make it so that employees had to get vaccinated. Now, eventually,
what?
that it was,
Or what?
or they'd lose their job.
Okay, does that qualify as force?
I mean, I would make a poll if I thought that it would be a split, but I'm pretty sure we all agree that that is a form of coercion. It's not the same thing as holding a pew-pew to somebody's head, but it is coercion.
That's why I said technically.
Yeah, I know,
but
no,
not-
but it's a serious question. I mean, because we need to define what constitutes force before we can. It seems to me.
You could argue it's a type of force, sure. I mean, I think it'd be silly to say it's nothing. It is a type of force. It's the same as a cop telling you have to do this, you're going to be killed. No, but it's on the
Right.
spectrum. Sure, of course, yeah.
It's as much force as the mRNA vaccines are vaccines.
Sure. It is a type of force, and the mRNA vaccines are a type of vaccine.
So I look.
Yeah, so exactly, Gridiron Master says the fact that we do trust some third parties does not mean that, one, we have to trust them, or two, that we trust all of them. Just a non-starter, just a non-starter point. You trust things, therefore you should trust this other thing.
What?
Think about people. Do you trust me? Okay, well, you have trust then, so then you should trust every person ever. You should trust Jesse Smollett.
Stupid.
Sure. It is a type of force, and the mRNA vaccines are a type of vaccine.
I really think the problem was with the COVID response. I really think the problem was the use of force. I mean, I can understand to some degree, although I'm very skeptical of the pharmaceutical companies and far more skeptical than your insistence upon the utility of consensus might
I mean, I said shit. Me too.
lead me to believe you're skeptical of them, which is surprising, I would say, given
I'm
that
very
the
skeptical of
pharmaceutical-
them. That's why I'm glad there's multiple companies, multiple countries, multiple academic institutions that do research, and the FDA. Yeah, I'm very skeptical. You should be in any private system. You should be skeptical of every private company, of course.
Yeah, but you're not. You're not. You may have a level of skepticism that, well, I can't trust them completely, but they said it was okay, so that satisfied my skepticism. That's not really what we mean. And yeah, I'm one of those. I trust Morty in that he would eat any treat he's given, and even there, that is a reasonable thing that's a reasonable thing to assume. But there'll be especially. You've seen him in the summer when when it gets dark and there's fireworks and whatever. He'll be down here and we'll get a super chat and I'll do my best. And he doesn't need it. That still doesn't mean that it's unreasonable to think this. Content issues? What do you mean? I don't know what that means. Aaron said, no, you're good. You're good. You are good. Welcome to the party. Glad to have you. Glad to have you.
FDA. Yeah, I'm very skeptical. You should be in any private system. You should be skeptical of every private company, of course, whether we're talking media, pharmaceuticals, or automobile manufacturers. Yeah.
Lip service.
But skepticism doesn't mean a blind adherence to the complete total opposite of whatever it is they're saying, right? They're undoubtedly,
Right.
like, if you look at
How about
Alzheimer's
if you're-
research, there's been groundbreaking improvements on drugs to treat Alzheimer's research over the past 3 years that 5 years ago, none of these drugs even existed. And now, yeah, so I mean,
How about if you're skeptical of anyone who's willing to use force to put their doctrine forward?
then
How's that
you're
as a
Seems reasonable.
skeptical
rule of
of
thumb?
literally every single person, political ideology ever have existed.
Wait, what? What? So you have to, so people are lying to you, and so you can't trust anybody. Is that what he was saying?
If you're skeptical of anyone who's willing to use force to put their doctrine forward?
So anybody who's willing to use force should put their doctrine forward, like willing to arrest political opponents, willing to advocate that if you use the wrong name, that you should be arrested. Those kinds of things.
Then
How's that
you're
as a rule of
skeptical of
thumb?
literally every single person, political ideology ever have existed.
So every political ideology is predicated on forcing your ideology on other people. If you, I mean, at the most basic, like, oh, you don't even know if we're brains in a vat. Yes, at that level, the threat of force is what keeps society together. But that won't work unless on top of that layer, there is a legitimate trust of the people in the continuity of that society. And again, I think he's right about to get in there. Oh, consent issues. Yeah, I mean, you know, Gonzaga said Destiny is failing to account for anyone who doesn't take a side due to politics or ideology. Some people are skeptical due to actually looking into the subject and not trusting what they see. I mean, bars, bruh. Bars. Exactly.
You're skeptical of literally every single person, political ideology ever have existed in all of humankind. Some degree of force, you would undoubtedly believe this, right? Some degree of force is probably necessary for any kind of cohesive society.
See, this is so I knew this is where he was going. So, okay, first I want to make that a poll because I'm not sure. So is force necessary for a cohesive society? Why did they capitalize society? So just as a jump off, I want to know where you guys are coming from. Is force necessary for a cohesive society? I do unfortunately want to say yes, because there are people who will be outside of the realm of being able to adhere to social norms. But that sounds to me more like the exception to the rule that you don't need force. There are some people in which you need force, but for the most part, you don't need force. So, I mean, yeah, it really depends on how, like, what that means. Does that mean yes, because there are exceptions, or does that mean no, because the exception doesn't break the rule? I don't know. So to him, it's either you agree, so you get the jam, or you disagree, so you just believe the exact opposite. Yep. Comsec said yes, but the force itself should also be regulated. Definitely agree. Definitely agree. Definitely agree. I said yes for the reasons you laid out. It's about degrees of force. Okay, so I think we're all on the same page here. Let's see what JBP said.
Ever have existed in all of humankind. Some degree of force, you would undoubtedly believe this, right? Some degree of force is probably necessary for any kind of cohesive society, right?
No, I don't believe that.
Of course there is.
No,
Even if you had a tribe of 100, 120 people, if somebody was stealing something.
Okay, again, so here now we have, if you have 120 people and nobody steals and one person steals one time, then we might need to use force, violence, something along that line. And that's where, like, okay, fine. But what if you just I mean, you know what I mean? So it's a tough question.
right? You have to punish that person.
I said earlier that becomes complicated when you're dealing with the psychopathic types.
Okay, I think that's a little bit of a stretch from JVP, because people who are stealing or committing crimes of any type are not necessarily psychopathic. But so I gotta go with Destiny on this one.
I said earlier that becomes complicated when you're dealing with the psychopathic types. Right, so that's a complication. But I would say, generally speaking, that the necessity to use force is a sign of bad policy. And no, I don't think, I'm not particularly Hobbesian. I don't think that the only reason people comport themselves with a certain degree of civility in civilized society is because they're terrified by the fact that the government has a monopoly on force that can be brought against them at any moment.
That's basically Calvin Hobbes. He said it Hobbesian, just that like people will follow because of, the rules.
I think that keeps the psychopaths in line to some degree. But I think that most people are enticed into a cooperative relationship, and that formulating the structures that make those relationships possible is the sign of good policy.
I have to ask, because I have watched a lot of your stuff in the past. I remember you speaking very distinctly on this, that for instance, when two men are communicating with each other, there is
the threat of violence. That has nothing to do with the notion that force is necessary for a cohesive society. So yeah, I mean, 80% of you and I as well say yes, but it's not what Destiny is presenting. Also, because you use force to protect yourself in a fight, but you don't just off the person you're fighting with for coming at you. You regulate the amount of danger in the situation. You regulate the amount of danger the situation puts you in. Well said. I like it. So he said, like I said, after the fact, when the individual will is harmed, that's when the collective will can be forced. Ground said, because the laws exist does not mean your society is based on force. I don't know. It's tough. I'm really split on that. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think more about that. So it said there are exceptions for every rule. Real quick, I just want to see. All right, I think we're going to skip over to the climate stuff because we basically got what we got here. So the soul said there are exceptions for every rule. Yes, there are people who will always be outside the ideal cohesion. I'm a general mind, though. If you need force, I'm of the general mind, though. If you need force to spread your idea, they aren't good enough. Yep. And typically that's essentially if I remember what JVP is saying throughout the rest of this. So let's move on over to the climate stuff.
City isn't immediate. I don't think
the
alcoholism
reason for issue too, right? Because the reason.
So this is prior to what we just watched. This is earlier in the conversation. We've now switched over to the main podcast, and they are talking about that climate.
Well, is it immediate? I mean, obesity isn't immediate. I don't think alcoholism
the reason for the tax is to stop people from pursuing a certain form of short-term gratification at the cost of their longer-term well-being.
Correct. And that exact same idea, if you believe climate models, or if you believe that we're heading in a certain direction in terms of climate, the overall warming of the planet, would be the same argument you would make for climate change.
Only if you believe that you could model economic development 100 years into the future.
Well, we're not trying to model. We're more concerned with modeling climate development. Economic development.
We're
yes,
equally.
absolutely.
Well, okay. Tell me how I'm wrong. I don't believe that, because what I
see. Oh, what a brilliant just phrase. Tell me how I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm wrong. That is such a powerful thing. That if you can understand when to use that, when somebody is saying something that you either know is wrong, or you might be like, I might be wrong here. Tell me where I'm wrong, because then you're opening the door. You're already accepting the possibility that you're wrong. You're like, I'm not wrong. How am I wrong? The very slight difference in okay, how am I wrong? Or show me how I'm wrong. So we listening. I'm pulling this up for you, girl. Nick said climate change, that can't possibly be something they disagree on. We finna find out.
see happening is two things. We have climate models that purport to explain
what's going to happen over a century on the climate side, but we have economic models layered right on top of those that claim that there's going to be various forms of disaster for human beings economically as a consequence of that climate change. And so that's like two towers of Babel stacked on top of one another. And so, because if people were just saying, oh, the climate's going to change.
Really quick. You see how he folded religion into what he was saying without relying on the belief. It's like two towers of Babel. You don't need to believe anything. You don't need to believe anything to understand the point that he's making there.
On top of one another. And so, because if people were just saying, oh, the climate's going to change, there'd be no moral impetus in that. It's the climate's going to change and that's going to be disastrous for the biosphere and for humanity.
That's what they say. So it says he really comes at it from an interesting perspective. I argue little known science because that's my shtick with AGW. I love how JBP uses sociology and economics for his arguments. Fascinating. I said shit. Me too.
The climate's going to change and that's going to be disastrous for the biosphere and for humanity. But that's an economic argument as well as a climate-based argument.
It's both, but the worst projections of what would happen if the climate took a disastrous turn are worse than the worst projections of what is our planet going to look like economically if we hardcore police,
right. But why would you? Okay, but I don't.
Yeah. So then the just because one is worse, now you have to have a reason to go. Okay, yeah. If it goes left, then it's worse than if it goes right. You're missing the step of why we think it would go left versus right.
I don't understand the distinction between the models.
Well, the argument would be that whatever pain and suffering poor people might endure right now because of a move towards green energy, that pain and suffering is going to be short-term and far less than the long-term pain and suffering.
Right, but that's dependent on the integrity of the economic models. And
well, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with a top-down implementation of, well, you have to do this for the future people. I think that is something that should be bottom up. That you plant the tree which shade you will never be able to enjoy. But that shouldn't be the job of the government. That's where it gets scary. David says, I choose, quote, get home and get intoxicated and watch Family Feud instead of hopping in for a climate discussion. I might hop in the after party, though. Shout out to David and shout out to the Discord. Guys, it is free to join. Completely free to join. We have our free chat channel. We have our current events. We are in there 24/7 hanging out, having a good time, talking about this, that, and everything. I maybe talk a little bit too much about my life, but hey, it is what it is. It is free to join. Please come and join us. It is a good time. But if you're a member of the channel, you get access to the full server, including the after party David was just talking about. Well, you're not stuck behind your keyboard. You're actually on screen with me and everybody else. You can come up if you want to. You don't have to. Either way, it is a grand old time. Come and join us.
To be short-term and far less than the long-term pain and suffering.
Right, but that's dependent on the integrity of the economic models and the
climate models as well, right?
Exactly, but in exactly the stacked manner that I described. And like, there's nobody in 1890 who could have predicted what was going to happen in 1990 economically. Not a bit.
Okay,
not a bit. And if we think we can predict like 50 years out now with the current rate of technology and calculate the potential impact of climate change on economic flourishing for human beings, we're deluded. No one can do that. And then, it's worse. So imagine that as you do that and you project outward, your margin of error increases. That's absolutely, definitely the case. And at some point, you're certainly on the climate side, the margin of error gets rapidly to the point where it subsumes any estimate of the degree to which the climate is going to transform. And that happens even more rapidly on the economic side.
Potentially, but right now, this is a disagreement on the fact of the matter, though, not the philosophy of what we're talking about in terms of controlling externalities.
Okay, so what's that fact? So then what he's saying is that we're coming at this, but we're disagreeing on the basic facts. So what fact is it that you think you're operating on that JBP doesn't believe?
If we think, I'm curious, let's say that we think we can accurately predict the climate and the economic impact, and we think that the climate impact would be far worse if we don't account for that, both in terms of human conditions.
I don't believe any of those presumptions.
Sure, but then if you don't, but I mean, like, obviously, if I agreed with that factual analysis, I would probably agree with you on the prescription here too, right?
Well, yeah, probably. So maybe you should dig into why it is that you think what you think and he thinks what he thinks, because one of you is wrong.
none of the climate models were accurate or couldn't accurately predict anything.
They're
Then I'd
not
also say why make
sufficiently, well, they're not sufficiently accurate. That's the first thing.
They're not sufficiently accurate. So while they may not be inaccurate, they're not sufficiently accurate to make the claims that the people the green people are making.
And because they have a margin of error, and it's a large margin of error, they don't even model cloud coverage well. That's a big problem. They don't have the resolution. They don't have nearly the resolution to produce the accuracy that's claimed by the climate apocalypse mongers.
Gotta have that cloud coverage. I mean, come on.
Keep saying that, but we just got another one of the hottest years on record. How many times are we going to have another hottest year on record?
Okay, even so, again, now you have to. You're working backwards again, Destiny. You're working backwards. Hottest year on record, year after year after year, may be the case. That doesn't automatically mean, well, we're all going to burn up because the climate, the greenhouse gases. And the ozone layer. Oh wait, no, they fixed the ozone layer's fixed now. It's carbon dioxide, the plant food that's going to kill us. You're working backwards. This is how you can tell when there's leaps. You can only get from it's the hottest year to the climate is fucked. If you already are coming from the last point that climate change is bad and is happening and we need to stop it. Comment of the night! Comment of the night! They're turning the clouds gay! Comment of the night. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Hottest years on record. How many times are we going to have another hottest year on record? How many times are we going to have an increase of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere before we're finally like, okay.
I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because it depends. The scientific answer.
Because nobody cares. And let's not say if the heat index measurements are only taken in dense cities, it will skew one way. If you only measure in an open field, again, it will skew in another way.
Answer to that question depends precisely on the time frame over which you evaluate the climate fluctuation. And that's actually an intractable scientific problem. So you might say, well, if you take the last 100 years, this variation looks pretty dismal. And I'd say, well, what if you took the last 150,000 years or the last 10,000 or the last 10 million? You can't specify the damn time frame.
I'll give you a perfect example of something that I learned when I was first getting into cryptocurrency. And, perfect. So y'all, okay. So y'all see that, Bitcoin has been up recently, but in the last day, we went up from where we 66,000 to all the way down to 62. We're back up at 64, but damn. But as JVP is saying, if we go from 1 day to 1 month, that's very different. If we go from 1 month to 1 year, wow, that's very different. And so the context in which what is the appropriate context to look at if you're looking at a chart of what is Bitcoin doing, because I want to decide whether I should do this or not, then the wider of a perspective that you have, the better. Same with climate. It was the hottest year ever over the last 100 years. And again, I will remind you guys that this was the first political conversation I had with my dad that started our relationship. And he said something about climate change is the biggest hoax in the history of America. And I was like, Dad, what? You can't say that. You can't say that. What do you mean? 97% of scientists agree. And here we are. All right, let's dive back in.
Or the last 10,000 or the last 10 million. You can't specify the damn time frame of analysis.
The time frame is incredibly important. That would be like saying, look at your, let's say somebody developed cancer and they didn't realize it, and the person has lost, 40 or 50 pounds in the past 6 months. And I'm just like, you look very sickly. And you're like, oh.
Okay, so then if we're talking about climate, then we wouldn't be talking about 6 months. We would be talking about 16 years. If somebody lost 50 pounds over 16 years, that wouldn't really be a thing now, would it?
okay, well, look at my weight fluctuation over the past 10 years. You say, well, that doesn't really matter. What matters
I'm
is
not
the fact that
saying
in
the
past
time
6
frame
months-
isn't important.
Well, but I'm
I'm
saying
saying
like
that it is important.
Yeah,
I'm
but no.
saying I don't know how to specify it.
Well, you would probably specify it with the beginning of the industrial age, right?
I love how everything Destiny says is, well, probably, but he also says it with the confidence that no, probably necessary. I'm almost sure that it was a semantic thing that he trained himself to say probably. Well, I said probably to cover his own ass. So the average global temperature is such bullshit. Many scientists argue against this, and they make a lot of sense. Not enough stations in enough places. El Nino, La Nina, sun cycles just for a few. So what you're saying is, so you're telling me, you are telling me that it's complicated? Like how the planet works is complicated? I don't know about all that. That sounds conspiratorial.
It is important.
Yeah, but
I'm
no.
saying I don't know how to specify it.
Well, you would probably specify it with the beginning of the industrial age, right?
Why?
Because that's when carbon dioxide, which is a gas that's trapping more heat on the
Why
planet.
is that
begins
relevant to the time over which you compute the variability?
Because it seems like as carbon dioxide is increased in the atmosphere, the surface temperatures have risen at a rate that is a departure from what we'd expect over 150,000 year cycles of temperature variations on the planet.
Is it no.
Not with that time frame. That's
Absolutely.
just not the case.
It's absolutely the case.
No, what do you mean? You just flipped to 150,000 year time span.
What I'm saying is that if we expect to see a temperature do this in a 150,000 year time span, in a 100 year time span, seeing it do this, that's very worrying. Now,
You mean like Michael Mann's hockey stick, the one that's under attack right now in court by a major statistician who claimed that he falsified his data? I mean, that spike?
I'm talking about the record temperatures that are declared, that have been declared for like the past 5 years, that have also increased with the concentration of parts per million of carbon dioxide of the atmosphere.
See, I missed it by half a second, but just like the look on his face, it's like, bro, you, Jordan Peterson, don't know this? Don't agree with me? The same way that I was being an arrogant, stupid, ignorant fuck to my dad when he was absolutely right.
I mean, I'm not going to tell you that every model is perfect.
They're
but
not
right
perfect.
now, sure. But right now, we're like standing in traffic with our eyes closed, saying the car hasn't hit me yet, so I don't think there's any coming. I think it's pretty
No, that's not what's happening.
undeniable at this point that there is an impact on climate across the planet. I
think that's highly deniable.
Yeah, I mean, I for so long I accepted it because so many people said it. But where is the evidence for that? Okay, the climate scientists agree. Okay, what is it that they agree on? What is the science? What is the methodology? What is it? And I'll be honest with you, it's not like I've looked into it super deeply. I've definitely done some reading, but it's not like I've looked into the methodology of every study that's ever been done and da-da-da-da-da. But if it's so obvious, somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson should be able to spit it out in half a sentence. But they can't. Because it's bullshit. Welcome, Seabass.
We have no idea what the impact is from. We don't know where the carbon dioxide is from. We can't measure the warming of the oceans. We have terrible temperature records going back 100 years. Almost all the terrestrial temperature detection sites were first put outside urban areas, and then then you have to correct. Then you have to correct for the movement of the urban areas, and then you introduce an error parameter that's larger than the purported increase in temperature that you're planning to measure. This isn't data. This is guess, and there's something weird underneath it.
This isn't data. This is a guess, and there's something weird underneath it. Something like a political ideology to make you think that you have to give up everything that you own, otherwise everybody will die. You have to give everything, not just give it up to the government, or everybody's going to die. You sure about that? You sure you're sure about that? You sure you're sure about that? All right. Monkster9 said, when the climate scientists know if we agree, we get the money. When the climate scientists know if we agree, we get the money. That answers many questions.
Bingo.
The food pyramid. The food pyramid. That is the beginning and end of my argument as to blindly trusting the science. The food pyramid. Doctors advertising cigarettes when they knew, maybe not the doctors specifically, probably the doctors, but definitely the tobacco companies, knew it was addictive, it was causing cancer, all of that shit. So get the fuck out of my face with some shit like, well, 97% of scientists agree. All right, well, let them put their fucking dick on the table and let me chop it off if they're wrong, and let's see how many of them agree.
Measure. This isn't data. This is guess. And there's something weird underneath it. There's something weird that isn't oriented well towards human beings underneath it. It has this guise of compassion. Oh, we're going to save the poor in the future. It's like that's what the bloody communists said. And they killed a lot of people doing it. And we're walking down that same road now with this insistence that, you know, we're so compassionate that we care about the poor 100 years from now. And if we have to wipe out several 100 million of them now, well, that's a small price to pay.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, we'll just wipe out 700 million fucking people because future. How about me? Am I allowed to be important in this universe, or is my only point of existence to suffer for future humans? Now, if you're a Christian and you think you need to suffer to get into some utopia, whatever, that's a whole different thing. That is not what is being presented here. That is not what is being presented here. Listen to it again.
And it's and they killed a lot of people doing it. And we're walking down that same road now with this insistence that, you know, we're so compassionate that we care about the poor 100 years from now. And if we have to wipe out several 100 million of them now,
oh, well,
that's a small price to pay for the future utopia. And we've heard that sort of thing before.
So let's see. How many of the wealthy politicians who espouse this regularly are selling their beach properties and parking their private jets? None of them. Enough said. And even if we can talk about the notion of you get to a certain size of business, whatever industry you might be in, and it doesn't make sense to fly commercial anymore. Fine. But then don't tell me that I need to keep my air conditioning at 78 degrees in the dead of summer. You pick and choose. Does it matter or does it not?
And the alternative to that is to stop having global level elites plot out a utopian future or even an anti-dystopian future. And that's exactly what's happening now with organizations like the WEF. And if this wasn't immediately impacting the poor in a devastating manner, I wouldn't care about it that much, but it is.
Based.
You know, I watched over the course of the last 5 years, the estimates of the number of...
True. According to the climate crazies, yes, you, me, all of us are expendable. Just not only are we expendable, but we are to blame. We are to blame. It is our fault that we need to end ourselves because it's just so bad out there.
Of people who were in serious danger of food privation rise from about 100 million to about 350 million.
Food privation or deprivation?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's a major price to pay for a little bit of what would you say for progress on the climate front that's so narrow it can't even be measured.
I don't think the increase in hungry people on the planet is because of climate policies.
Why?
You sure? You sure about that? Because a lot of this comes back to agriculture. And guess what agriculture is? Food. Shout out to Cash65. Welcome to the party. Said, so glad I went down the climate change rabbit hole. What'd you find? Because, I mean, like I said, I haven't gotten too deep. Once I realized how fake the narrative was, I just realized that, like, oh, okay, this isn't something I necessarily need to know backwards and forwards. But if you went down the rabbit hole, what did you find? Yeah, so yeah, Bill Gates really admits that he has one of the biggest personal carbon footprints, but it's okay because he invests in protecting the environment. Probably. Privation, the state of being deprived. All right. Gotta call me out like that. All right, fair enough, fair enough.
I don't think the increase in hungry people on the planet is because of climate policies.
Why not?
Because I don't think that countries in Africa are being pushed away from fossil fuels. I mean, most developing
Of course they are. They can't even get loans from the World Bank to pursue fossil fuel development. And there's plenty of African leaders who are screeching at the top of their lungs about that because the elites in the West have decided that, well, it was okay for us to use fossil fuel so that we wouldn't have to starve to death and our children had some opportunities.
But not you. Not you. Yeah, every 400 years, right?
But maybe the starving masses that are too large a load for the world anyways shouldn't have that opportunity. And that's direct policy from the UN, fostered by organizations like the WEF. They're going to have to turn to renewables. Yeah, well, good luck with that, because renewables have no energy density. Besides that, they're not renewable and they're not environmentally friendly. And then one more thing, there's one more weird thing underneath all of this.
Okay.
Well, let's say if carbon dioxide was actually your bugbear and it was genuine. Well, then why wouldn't the Greens, for example, in Africa, the progressives, be agitating to expand the use of nuclear energy? Especially because Germany has to import it anyways, especially because France has demonstrated that it's possible.
Holy shit. I need to listen to wow. This is a situation I have not thought of before. All right, let's grab some of these comments. Zippy said he's using fancy words. Even Zippy and his wealth of Britcoms and Britcop dramas, Brit histories, dramas does not know.
What?
Who? Oh, Peterson? All right, yeah, let's see what he said.
It was actually and it was genuine. Well, then why wouldn't the Greens, for example, in Africa, the progressives,
rain down in Africa,
be agitating to expand the use of nuclear energy?
So why don't people in Africa,
especially because Germany has to import it anyways, especially because France has demonstrated that it's possible, we could drive down the cost of energy with low cost nuclear. And
so he's saying France has shown that it is France has shown that it's possible. Germany needs it. Africa can definitely use it. And JP is just saying like, okay, well, why aren't we doing it? And the answer is fear. The answer is left-wing propaganda about fucking about how bad nuclear is, and playing up things like Chernobyl and Fukushima, when it's like, yes, those things can happen, but we can have better regulations. Crazy. The people on the right want to regulate nuclear energy. Oh my God. But that can be done. So the soul said the rains down in Africa mixed with higher CO2 levels may just be greening the Sahara. Maybe.
there'd be no carbon production. And then the poor people would have something to eat because they'd have enough energy. And that isn't what's happening. And that's one of the things that makes me extremely skeptical of the entire narrative.
Right. So it's not just about the claims of the science. It's about the actions of people who think that this is true. What would you be doing if you thought this was true? And you're not doing it.
It's like two things. The left will sacrifice the poor to save the planet. And the left will deindustrialize even at the nuclear level, despite the fact that it devastates the poor. And that's even worse, because if you devastate the poor and you force them into a short-term orientation, in any given country where starvation beckons, for example, they will cut down all the trees and they will kill down all the animals.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can't think about you can't think about your family until you think about yourself. You can't even think about what you're going to eat before you think about how, or I forget which one is which, but you can't figure out what you're gonna think about what you're gonna eat before you figure out how you're gonna shelter yourself from the elements. You can't think about who you're gonna love and how you're gonna be loved if you can't eat. And you certainly can't think about the future of your society when you can't eat.
Where starvation beckons, for example, they will cut down all the trees and they will kill down all the animals and they will destroy the ecosphere. And so even by the standards of the people who are pushing the carbon dioxide externality control, all the consequences of that doctrine appear to me to be devastating, even by their own measurement principles. We're trying to fix the environment. Well, boys and girls, doesn't look like it's working.
Nope. And guess what? The environment is not what needs fixing. That's another semantic tool. We need to save the environment. The environment's going to be just fine without us. It was here long before us, and it'll be here long after. What you are saying is that we need to make sure we can live, which is a valid concern. But don't act like it's not selfish.
All you've managed to do is make energy 5 times as expensive and more polluting. You were wrong. That didn't work. And I can't understand. You can help me. That's why you're here today talking to me. I can't understand how the left can support this.
Just one quick thing. Let's say that everything you've said is true. What do you think is the plan then? What is the goal? What is the drive? Like, why push obviously horrible ideas for the planet and the poor?
That's a good question.
To take your freedom, globalization, to make sure that there is a concentration of power so that you have no power, you have no ability to speak up, to say anything, to live how you want to live. This is, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me how people will just like assume that, oh, that can't happen here. It's only happened in every single fucking civilization to ever exist. But that's not going to happen here. We got iPhones. We got TikTok. Come on. Gosh, this is the video that woke me up. Well, goddamn, welcome to being awake or whatever. But gang on that. So the Soul said geopolitical climate policies seemingly are willing to sacrifice millions of poor today to hypothetically, at best, save millions of poor in 100 years. Again, make it make sense. That don't make no sense. That don't make no sense. That don't make no sense. It's not that I'm a stable genius like Trump, but I can read Revelation 18 for myself. Fair enough. Western society today is so accustomed to our comforts, we wouldn't know how to live without it. Not only wouldn't we not know how to live without it, I would disagree. I would push back against that. It's because people adjust, people adapt. That's what humans do. The notion of believing that you could live without our custom comforts, that is the issue. So there would be a very, 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 very long and arduous and brutal and deadly learning curve period where it's like, oh, we're in this new world now. Your skills to be able to talk well on YouTube or to be really good with fixing computers or this, that, or the other don't fucking matter anymore. So people would definitely adjust, but the notion that that could ever be a possibility, they don't ever think of. Nuclear does fix many issues, but everyone wants to centralize everything under 3 IP conglomerates, stateless, nationless empires that rule the world from the shadows. Scary, scary, scary.
Like, why push obviously horrible ideas for the planet and the poor?
That's a good question.
Wait, I missed it. What did you say?
Like, why push obviously horrible ideas for the planet and the poor?
Oh yeah, because they don't care. Money. Again, we just talked about Purdue. We talked about tobacco. We talk all the fucking time about the money aspect of transing kids or just transing people in general. It's all about the money.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Well, because you're
money,
positing it, right? So what do you think is the driver goal?
Well, I listen to what people say. Here's the most terrible thing they say. There are too many people on the planet. Okay, so who says that? I've heard people say that for 30 years.
Bill Gates.
Perfectly ordinary, compassionate people. Well, there's too many people on the planet. And I think, well, for me, that's like hearing Satan himself take possession of their spine and move their mouth. It's like, okay, who are these excess people that you're so concerned about? And exactly who has to go and when and why? And
Why is a fantastic question. So that's why sales is king. Persuasion and manipulation of conversation will always be useful and profitable. It's because not only money, it's power. They want to oppress white people and Christians. I think they just want to oppress everybody, but I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you.
So concerned about, and exactly who has to go and when and why and how,
Yeah,
and who's going to make that decision. And even if you're not consciously aiming at that, you are the one who uttered the words. You're the ones who muttered the phrase. What makes you think that the thing that possessed you to make you utter that words isn't aiming at exactly what you just declared?
Bingo.
And take that exact mentality, exactly what he just said, and apply it to how whenever we talk about the trans stuff, that it's about fucking your children. It is about taking your babies and having sex with them. That's where it's ending up. And so it may not be the average person who is, not really, not very popular and doesn't get a lot of friends. And so they see a lot of acceptance in the LGBT community, and they don't really want to do anything. So they just, it's a girl. So she cuts her hair short and she just starts going by non-binary. She's not the person who is trying to actively, do that. But the people who are sprinkling this into the lexicon, the zeitgeist, that is what they want. That is what they want. We already know it's what they do. We already know. I would think that this was crazy conspiracy shit before Epstein. But we know now. So it's not a question. It's not a question. It's not a debate. They want to fuck your children.
Possessed you to make you utter that words isn't aiming at exactly what you just declared. And so that's a terrible vision. But when you look at what happens in genocidal societies, and they emerge with fair regularity, and usually with a utopian vision at hand, the consequence is the mass destruction of millions of people. So why should I assume that something horrible isn't lurking like that right now, especially given that we have pushed a few 100 million of people back into absolute poverty when we were doing a pretty damn good job of getting rid of that?
Biggest wealth transfer in history. There are people who owned their own successful businesses that are now unable to, unable to pay for anything, but are in crazy amounts of debt compared to what they were. Because I still believe that at the top, it's less about grooming children. It's more about taking away control from parents and demoralization of society through our children. Maybe, sure, but that doesn't really have the same sting, does it? And so, if both these things are true, what do you think is going to get through to people more effectively? That, well, they want to, take away the control from parents and demoralize society through our children, or they want to fuck your baby boy. Both are true. Both are absolutely true. And this may be a bigger part of the average person, but you gotta fight fire with fire. And I'm not lying, so I'm good. Glomtech goes on to say, don't get me wrong, the sickos will take advantage of it for sure. The elite want power. They already have, that's a good point. They already have the sex that they want and aren't used to sharing. That's a good point. That's a good point. They still want to fuck your kids. You can say it to our face. I don't know how we can deny their plan is to take our kids. Right. Well, I mean, what we're saying is take our kids to do what? I'm being a little bit more graphic, and Glomtech's being a little bit more practical, but they're essentially the same. So said, I think it's altogether being used for replacement and population reduction. It all leads to it in the big picture sense. Easy to see. Yep. Cash says, here's a question. Why do you believe the ultra wealthy are overwhelmingly Democrat? Oh, that's easy, because the Democrats are in I mean, it's really the Uniparty, but the Democrats are the one who put it more outright, that create these regulation on regulation on regulation that separates the average person and the wealthy people, that the existence of the ultra wealthy as a class versus individuals is because there's laws in place that if you're, working in such a way that helps the government, they're going to help you out. And if you're not, they're going to kick you down. And so it's not based on merit. It's based on how well are you helping the government. And it may not be in every single case, but by and large, it's because if you're ultra wealthy, then you already fall in line with the people who are making the regulations that are taking out your competition. Like Walmart is going to be, fuck yeah, Democrats, because we need all these regulations to make sure that mom and pop store can't get up to our size and compete with us. But they say to be, they claim to be the party of the working man. That hasn't been true for a very, very long time.
100 million of people back into absolute poverty when we were doing a pretty damn good job of getting rid of that. I just don't understand what's happening in Germany or in the UK. Like, it's insane. Like, look, man, if they would have got rid of the nuclear plants and made energy 5 times as expensive, and the consequence would have been they weren't burning lignite coal as a backup, and their unit production of energy, of pollution per unit of energy had plummeted, you could say, well, look, we hurt a lot of poor people, but at least the air is cleaner. It's like, no, air's worse and everyone's poorer.
Yep. Contentious, I agree that the way you say something affects how it's perceived. However, there can be a slippery slope using any method to win. Case in point, lefties calling everyone fascist. I get your point, though. Yeah, and so when they're not trying to fuck the kids, then I won't say that they're trying to fuck the kids, because everyone's not a fascist. So I wouldn't say that everyone's a fascist. But as long as there are people who are actively trying to fuck children, then I have no problem using a more stark example of the litany of reasons why this is bad. Now, if I get into saying things that are not true, now we have a problem. But until then, I'm Gucci. So the soul says, follow the money and the crony capitalism policies that centralize the locations of said money. Exactly.
So, explain to me how the hell the left can be anti-nuclear.
Okay.
I don't understand it at all.
Gotcha. All right. This is something that I brought up earlier that is concerning to me. I feel like when people get political beliefs, I feel like what happens is, what we think happens, what we'd hope happen is you have some moral or philosophical underpinning. And then from there, you combine this with some epistemic understanding of the world. And then you combine these two things, you engage in some form of analysis. And your moral view,
nice if that was true.
You start to apply like prescriptions. So maybe I'm religious. Maybe I analyze society and I see that particular TV shows lead to premarital sex. So my societal prescription is we should ban these TV shows, right? Ideally, this is how you would imagine this process works. What I find happens, unfortunately, all too often is what people do is they join social groups. And then with those social groups, they inherit something that I call like a constellation of beliefs. And this constellation of beliefs, instead of rationally building on each of these, you basically get this like Jenga tower that is like floating over a table, and every block is like supporting itself, and no real part of the tower can be addressed because you pull out one piece, it all falls apart.
I think that's a fantastic analogy. I think that's a fantastic analogy. Why can't I say the word analogy for either side? That you whether it's left or right, you pick up this ideology and you just take it, you just take it whole. And because there are problems with no ideology is perfect. If you're not willing to look at those problems and address those problems, then you become like Destiny. No, I'm just kidding. But it's definitely a problem. I mean, as bad as we can say Destiny is in these particular instances, let's not forget that he's still the best one by and large on the left. Everybody else there is even worse than him. So, I mean, it is what it is.
And imagine this process works. What I find happens, unfortunately, all too often is what people do is they join social groups. And then with those social groups, they inherit something that I call like a constellation of beliefs. And this constellation of beliefs, instead of rationally building on each of these, you basically get this like Jenga tower that is like floating over a table, and every block is like supporting itself, and no real part of the tower can be addressed because you pull out one piece, it all falls apart.
And this is what he's describing is why you Christians have the idea of what an atheist is. Because so many atheists do exactly what Destiny just said and pick up because they no longer believe in God, and God is associated with right-wing politics in the Republican Party. They say, oh, well, I must be over here now. And then they just pick that up wholesale. So that's why, I mean, I continue to say the harder you push religion in your politics, the worse it's going to be. You can push the values of your religion without pushing the truth values of your religion. Nick said these cyber attacks are frightening. Imagine if you don't need a 1 megaton thermonuclear warhead at high altitude over Kansas for an EMP pulse. Simply releasing a computer virus. That's worse. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely there's definitely a lot of ways they could make us not have fun. So he says, what will your reaction be when you get a notice on your phone? Nuclear. This is not a drill. Thank fucking God. Just bring it right here. Land right here. Land right here. Hey, shout out to Cash 65. Oh my goodness. I think we have our first true disciple. Where my applause on that? Our first true disciple. Shout out to Cash 65. Let's go. Let's go. So, Cash, make sure the link that So the Soul just dropped, that is the link to the or no, not that one. If you could drop the Discord link. Cash, make sure you join. There you go. The Discord, because part of your membership comes with extra stuff from Discord. So I will look out for you. Make sure you hit that link and join us. And I hope to see you at the after party. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very, very much. And of course, that makes you the new sponsor of the stream. Everybody put cash in the chat. Cash in the chat.
Itself. Jenga tower that is like floating over a table, and every block is like supporting itself, and no real part of the tower can be addressed because you pull out one piece, it all falls apart. So people become like very stuck in all of this combined constellation stuff, and none of it is really given like any analysis, and you can't really push anybody from one way or another in terms of like reevaluating any of the beliefs that are part of this constellation. I wish I would have.
That's good. That's fine. That's right. Well, you know, there are models now of.
Sure.
There are models now.
Shout out again to our first true disciple
Of cognitive processing, belief system processing, that make the technical claim that what a belief system does is constrain entropy.
Sure, that's not surprising at all.
Okay,
yeah.
So and now the signal for released entropy, which would be a consequence of, say, violated fundamental beliefs, is a radical increase in anxiety, right? And a decrease in the possibility of positive emotion. And so people will struggle very hard against that, which is exactly the phenomena that you're describing.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with what you said. Although,
so here's my
so I'm not sure why it's relevant to the issue I was pursuing.
I'm getting.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's my issue. Okay, so when I'm trying to evaluate a situation, I like to think that I have I've got some insulation from the effects of what liberals think or what conservatives think. Is because on my platform, I don't necessarily have an allegiance to a particular political ideology. Like right now, I'm like center left to progressive, but I break really hard to progressive on certain issues. I think Kyle Rittenhouse is in the right. I think basically everything you guys are doing with indigenous people is insane, including the complete mass grave hoax. I think that I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. I have beliefs where I can break from my side, pretty hardcore, because I am not like allegiant to certain political ideology. One thing that worries me with this constellation beliefs thing is that sometimes when it comes to evaluating a particular policy or a particular problem, I feel like it's part of the constellation, and sometimes it inhibits people from like taking a step back and reasonably thinking about the issue. So when we're talking about climate change, you mentioned the WEF sacrificing tons of people, the UN.
So before he gets into that, we gotta shout out my boy Guam Check signing up for 6 months. 6 months. I just want to say good job, and we appreciate you, IJ. Guys, thank you so much. You are turning my heart to mush and making Morty fat as fuck, and we love it. Thank you. So, oh my goodness. Yo. You guys are amazing. guys are amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You guys are all you guys are all so amazing. Thank you, 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 thank you. Oh, either way, whatever. I don't fucking care. You can. I don't care. I love you all. I love you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
We're talking about climate change. You mentioned the WEF sacrificing tons of people, the UN, global elites, 5 times energy costs in Germany, genocidal people. I feel like this is part of like a whole thing where it's like, okay, well, let's take a quick step back and let's just like think rationally about this particular issue for one moment. Okay.
Well, you asked me what the motivation for anti-poor policies might be, so that's why I was.
Well, I did, but I got all of those things before I even asked that question. Because I think it's totally possible that somebody might say, okay, well, when you put carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it seems to cause an increase in surface temperatures. This has been happening from about the 1800s. And as we started to track surface temperatures, whether the thermometer is on top of the Empire State Building or in the middle of the field, it seems like there's an average rise in temperatures.
Okay. And then you are failing to make a connection to any other thing. Okay, it's hotter. And
people all around the world are observing this. In some places more than others. If you live in Seattle and 20 years ago, your apartment building wasn't built with air conditioner units, you feel that now. If you live in a place in London and you've never had an air conditioner before, now that's not acceptable. I think that people on the ground can see that there are changes. And I think that scientists, when they look in labs, can see changes. It might be that some models aren't precise enough. And it might be that for reasons we don't even understand
now.
Well,
the economic models certainly aren't precise enough.
Sure, maybe that might be true.
Maybe. They can't even
well, maybe. I mean, if you want to look into it, no, they're wrong.
Use them to predict the price of a single stock for 6 months. The economic models are not sufficiently accurate to calculate out the consequences of climate change over a century. Not in the least.
I like the comparison because economic models can't predict individual stocks, but they do predict the rough rise of the market. If you invest in the S&P 500,
you get cataclysmic collapse.
Nope, even with the cataclysmic collapse accounted for, you're going to see about 7% returns on average with inflation over long periods of time.
I wouldn't call an average a very sophisticated model analogous to climate change.
That's the difference between climate and weather, though. Right? It's that climate isn't going to tell.
Oh, you're not going to do this whole thing. What do you come over here if you want to come sit? He's not going to do this whole thing. Come. No? All right. Well, I don't know what he does. He climbs up here. And I tell him to come. Yeah, you want to come? Come on. There we go. There's Morty. Look how cute he is. But you gotta lay down though, dude. We're doing a show here. There's people watching, dude. Lay down. Thank you.
Tell you what the temperature is on a given day, but it might tell you the average surface temperature over a period of 1 year or 10 years. And then that's the difference between climate and weather. That's the difference between like the market and stuff.
Difference.
It is a hypothetical, but again, we're seeing more and more data every single year that things are getting hotter and hotter.
Let's jump out of our cloud of presuppositions for a minute.
Our cloud of presuppositions. I like that phrase. Next says the problem the right pushes the problem is the right pushes us athletes away. I say that as a lifelong Republican and an atheist raised by a Christian family. I said, shit, me too. That's another thing I really fucking miss about you, man. There's just too many goddamn Christians here. Joke. I said as a lifelong Republican and an atheist raised by a Christian family. They don't make it easy because they won't separate the church and state. Exactly. He likes to get my lap from a particular side. Yeah. I mean, he likes to switch it up. He knows what's good though. You guys see me all the time. I'll just have him right here, and he just wants to hop up. Oh my goodness. Yo. Oh my goodness. You guys are amazing. Let's get another treat for Morty with the $4 super chat. Thank you, guys. Oh, man, you are really, really blessing me tonight. You are really, really, really blessing me tonight. I guess Unwanted wanted that sponsorship spot because, again, you are the new co-sponsor of the stream. Thank you, sir. Let's dive right back in.
Well, okay, so let's jump out of our cloud of presuppositions for a minute.
Sure.
Now, one of the things that...
Before we do that, actually, because I want to say, there are some things that we've gotten as a result of investing in green energy that have been good. So, for instance, the power of solar energy has dropped dramatically in the United States, faster than anybody thought possible, such that solar energy is like competitive or beating fossil fuels in certain areas. As long as you can set the solar panels up, you're literally beating fossil fuels.
And as long as the sun is shining.
Well, I mean, it still is. We're not in nuclear winter
No,
yet.
no,
So
but it isn't when it's cloudy, and it
that's
isn't
why I
in the
said
winter.
depending on where you live. There are places,
Right.
equatorial places. If you're trying to set up a solar panel in Seattle, you might not have as much luck, or New York City
Or
might not have as
Germany.
much. Or
So real quick, shout out again to Unwanted Foe. I want to make sure, since our previous sponsor was at just $1 under, Soul to Soul went through Cash App, so we're gonna have 3 co-sponsors as of now, guys. You are amazing. I love you. Let's party.
solar panel in Seattle, you might not have as much luck, or New York City
Or
might not have as
Germany.
much. Or in Germany, true.
Or all
there are
of
also,
Europe,
I think,
or Canada.
there are also other issues that are coming up that I think are obfuscating our ability to evaluate what's being caused by green energy versus not. When we look at energy increases in Germany, I think there's a similar constellation around nuclear energy, for instance. People don't want nuclear energy because they think of nukes, and they think of nuclear meltdowns, and they think of Chernobyl, and they think of Fukushima, and they think of atomic bombs, and that's it.
And why is that? Why is that? Is that because people are just stupid and watch movies and don't pay attention to anything else? Or is there a notion of pushing this narrative that nuclear is scary? And hey, remember Fukushima? Hey, remember Chernobyl? You say it as if it's just existing in a vacuum, that these ideas just exist in a vacuum, when you are one of the biggest people who push these ideas, or at least push the people who push these ideas. Yep, the solar panels made by slave labor who don't even really do well. Guantax said, as much as I respect Destiny, he still just comes off as too pedantic and sophist for me to truly like him. Thank God he's not a San or a Vosh. Yeah, I would not be able to sit through Vosh or Hassan. I don't think so. And I mean, given that, I don't think I would do better in a, like, let's say I was having a religious debate, specifically a religious debate with JVP. I'm not saying that I would do better than Destiny is doing in this debate. I'm not saying it would do worse. Certainly not. But I'm just saying, again, that there's levels to this shit, and I don't know. And we have to remember, it's only relatively recently where he's been really talking to people of this echelon, if we want to put it that way. So in my mind, this should be very humbling between the Piers Morgan, between Norm Finkelstein, and this back to back to back. That should be extremely humbling. And hopefully he takes that in stride. Or maybe he's just a dumbass. I don't know. I genuinely do not know. I want to, think the best in people, but we're going to have to see. So the Soul said, green energy is a good investment. I hope myself for solar to get efficient enough that it could one day replace other energy, meaning not today. That said, it is only the beginning. We need free markets for innovation. And it seems like it happens overnight. I missed one. We need free markets for investment and expansion, and of course, more time to allow for these things. It just isn't feasible at this moment. Innovation seems to happen overnight. The reality is, it happens with years of failure leading to eventual success. Yeah, and I mean the reliance on, like, oh, this is the answer, and it's just like, we're getting there. But no, it's not the answer. You can't just switch over from all fossil fuels to all solar and act like the world is fixed. That's not how it works. Would I? I don't know. I appreciate the confidence. I do very much appreciate the confidence, but I don't know. We'll have to see. One day I'll be there. Y'all be watching me. Some other motherfucker with 2,000 subscribers going to be breaking me down. Golden I put IJ on the same level as Destiny when it comes to the atheist debate. Unfortunately, you have too much in common with JVP, and we respect your ideas too much to really debate. I mean, I think if I were to actually get down to, because I don't think he's a Christian. JVP is not a Christian. I don't think he believes that Christ was born of the creator of the universe and came down to earth and was sacrificed his I think that he is he just sees the value in the storytelling device that is the Bible. I don't think he really believes in the truth claims. CBS says Destiny wants to be your god, but needs your acceptance. Ooh, spicy from Seabass. I like it. David said solar is pretty darn cheap, at least at utility scale. Can definitely still be a good investment for a residential system, but there's a lot more overhead. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that, you know, on a long enough timeline, it will work as it exists now, but people don't have that timeline to spend. Like, any kind of investment is going to be a good investment on a long enough timeline. Well, not any investment, but I mean any investment that's going to go up on a long enough timeline is going to be good. The context then has to be like, okay, well, how much money do I have to actually use to live my life, and what is the timeline on which I can afford to have that money wait and build the value before I run out of money to live day to day. I don't know. I mean, you guys are giving me too much credit. You guys are giving me too much credit, because if I was going in there trying to make the argument that Christianity is not real, and his brand definitely hinges upon at least some validity, I don't know. So I don't think he's a Christian either. The archetypal stories that have shaped humans over the ages are just so useful, and especially well packed into the Bible, and easier to understand for modern Western countries than, say, the Vedic traditions. I'm not familiar, but either way, completely agree. Yeah, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. Except for the fact that you're spreading the notion that you believe in a God in the sky when you don't. But that's a whole other story.
Nuclear meltdowns, and they think of Chernobyl, and they think of Fukushima, and they think of atomic bombs, and that's it. And that's stupid. And I agree with you. But nuclear energy is a totally viable alternative to other forms of
Then
fossil
why
fuels.
does the radical left oppose it? You think it's just this
For the same reason the right opposes vaccines, because it sounds scary and it's a big thing and they don't trust it. It comes
well,
from
the
big
right
pharmacy-
has a reason to distrust vaccines in the aftermath of the COVID debacle.
It's true. Very, 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 very true. However, if we're talking about the what do we say all the time? Perception is reality. Optics is all that matters. Not all that matters. But I'll give him that point. Let me hear that one more.
Is a totally viable alternative to other forms of
Then
fossil
why
fuels.
does the radical left oppose it? You think it's just this for
the same reason the right opposes vaccines, because it sounds scary and it's a big thing and they don't trust it.
I think that's a fair response. I think that's a fair response. I don't think that disqualifies the information as to why solar's not just an answer to energy problems. But that's definitely true. David said you can save money immediately by paying less on a loan for the system that you spend on energy each month from the power company. Depends on how your state is regulated. Well, in my state, it is definitely not feasible. Where are we at? Zippy said Destiny is strong, independent blue hair. He does not need the consent of no man. Comment said wrong. JVP just lived his life as though God exists, and he'll never answer the question of if he believes in God. Well, I know that, but that's exactly the point. And I would be antagonistic if you're not going, like, because you know JVP knows what he thinks, whether or not there is a God exists, or he knows that he doesn't know. So if you're not going to answer it, I'm going to hold you down to it, and we're not going to talk about anything else. So maybe you're going to kick me out of your studio, but like, we're not getting past, do you believe that this, you purport Christianity, and I believe that the existence of Christianity in culture is holding us down, holding us back, preventing us from going beyond the 2,000-year-old ideology. So why do you push this? Look, I think it's got some good stories, okay? Okay, but do you believe that it's actually true? Well, I don't know. Well, if you don't know, that's how that would go. That's how that would go. And I'd be shitting my pants. But I mean, it definitely would be. There we go. Shout out to Cash. Just joined the Discord. And now he's got, other than me as the owner, he's got the highest, what do you call it? The highest permission. He is a true disciple. Y'all are only just disciples. He's a true disciple. Shout out one more fucking time to my boy, Cash.
See, you
For the
it might be just-
same reason the right opposes vaccines, because it sounds scary and it's a big thing and they don't trust it. It comes
well,
from
the
big
right
pharmaceutical-
has a reason to distrust vaccines in the aftermath of the COVID debacle.
Well,
because
I think-
they were imposed by force, and that was a
You
very
think you get to
bad
choose
idea.
if you have a nuclear power plant? That's imposed by force too, no? You don't get to choose where your energy comes from if you live in a country. You turn the light switch and hopefully you don't have a Chernobyl that melts down in your particular town, right?
I'll begrudgingly give him that. You don't really choose. If fair enough.
Well, you get to choose it because you can buy it or not.
Well,
That's
I mean,
the choice.
it does, but the
Nobody
negative.
had a choice with the vaccines.
Nobody had a choice whether or not they lived near Chernobyl or
Yeah.
not. Nobody has a choice.
Sure,
If there's a
they
nuclear
could
power
move
plant.
away.
Well, how realistic
that's
is it
a
to move?
That's not realistic. That's not realistic. Give him that point. You can't really choose if you if the entire country or the entire state or whatever it is decides to build a nuclear power plant in your backyard. That's not really realistic. Well, just move.
Move.
Struggle, dreaming. That's totally what's going on. Come on, baby. What we doing? What we doing? What the fuck? Hello.
Move like 500 miles. That's like telling conservatives when Biden tried to do
Okay,
the OSHA
well,
mandate for vaccines, like, well, you just get a different job, right?
I don't want to debate.
Yes, I agree. Just get a different job. That's not a good argument. And you can see how JVP is like, I shouldn't have gone here, and he's jumping off it.
That's like telling conservatives when Biden tried to do
Okay,
the OSHA
well,
mandate for vaccines, like, well, you just get a different job, right?
I don't want to debate about whether or not large nuclear power plants are frightening. They are.
Sure, okay.
And there are technologies now where that's not a problem. And I think that's
I
a
do support nuclear
counterproductive
power plants.
place
It's a
for our
good-
discussion to go, because I also understand why people are afraid of it. But what I don't understand, for example, is why the Germans shut down their nuclear power plants and the Californians are thinking,
Yeah. So what does that tell you? If it's I talked to the guy. I talked to the guy who came to my door about the energy prices, and I was like, oh, I can't, and whatever it was. And then maybe it was just that one company. Maybe it was just one company that was doing things. I don't know. But from my own anecdotal personal experience, when the guy was offering this, it was not something that was feasible. They needed an investment for the panels, and they said, well, over time. And I was like, I'm not going to be living here that long, so I that's not feasible for me. Quad said, I will say though that I really enjoy his breakdown of other religions like Buddhism and Judaism. Yeah, and I think that is that comes from the same. That same place of, well, I don't believe that the Bible is the end all be all. So I can see it for what it is. And I can look at, Buddhist texts. I can look at Jewish texts. I can look at Islamic texts and whatever else, or secular texts. That is, the way to be.
and have doing the same thing when they have to import power from France anyways. Like, it's completely.
Or burn coal, which is a million times worse.
Not
Yeah.
just coal, lignite.
Yeah.
Right. And then with regards to these renewable power sources, they have a number of problems. One is they're not energy dense. They require tremendous infrastructure.
Of course it is, but you didn't fucking pick True Disciple. What? I don't blame it on me. You fucking picked the thing.
To
You want to
produce.
be a True Disciple? Pick True Disciple.
They might be renewable at the energy level, but they're not renewable at the raw materials level. So that's a complete bloody lie. They're insanely variable in their power production. And because of that, you have to have a backup system, and the backup system has to be reliable without variability. And that means if you have a renewable grid, you have to have a parallel fossil fuel or coal grid to back it up when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, which is unfortunately very, very frequently.
And yeah, again, so like the dependence on the weather, not the climate, the weather is why it can be it's a great addition if you can afford it. Absolutely, solar is fantastic technology. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is that you can't hold it up as the replacement. That's all I'm saying. Does YouTube take money out of the memberships or just? Oh, they take out. Of course, bro. They take out of everything, every little damn thing. But that is okay. That is okay. As long as you guys are here with me, that is what really matters to me.
When the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, which is unfortunately very, very frequently. And I'm not going to say there's no place for renewable energy like solar and wind, because maybe there are specific niche locales where those are useful. But the logical what would you say, antidote to the problem of reliability, if we're concerned about carbon, but we're really not, would be to use nuclear. And the Greens haven't been like flying their bloody flags for 30 years saying, well, we could use fossil fuels for fertilizer and feed people, and we could use nuclear power to drive energy costs down in a carbon dioxide-free manner.
Makes sense to me.
That seems pretty bloody self-evident to me. And so then it brings up this other mystery that we were talking about earlier. You know, what's the impetus behind all this? Because the cover story is, oh, we care about carbon dioxide, which I don't think they do, especially given the willingness to sacrifice the poor. It makes no sense to me. And I think it's relevant to the issue you brought up, which is that people have these constellations of ideas, and there's a driving force in the midst of them, so to speak. They're not necessarily aware of what that driving force is.
Isn't it more likely that people are either misinformed or misguided than people are legitimately trying to depopulate the planet?
Yes, that doesn't mean that you can be ignorantly working towards a bad goal. That doesn't mean that you can't ignorantly or naively be working to an evil goal. You never cared about who? What? Huh?
Look, misinformed and ignorant, that's plenty relevant and worth considering. And stupidity is always a better explanation than malevolence. But malevolence is also an explanation. And no, I don't think it's a better explanation, because
why would we waste so much money sending food aid, having Bush do programs through Africa for AIDS, having other billionaires like Bill Gates invest so much money in anti-malarial stuff? Like, why would all the global elites be so invested in helping and killing the people here at the same time?
Well,
control. When you control everything, then money no longer matters, because the only thing you need money for is power. I know it's conspiratorial, but show me where I'm wrong. And it's not me. I'm not coming up with this stuff. Like, where is this not accurate?
Why would all the global elites be so invested in helping and killing the people here at the same time?
Well,
like, why would anybody be involved in anything illegal? There's some gain.
Some of it's confusion.
Okay.
And some of it's the fact, many things can be happening simultaneously with a fair bit of internal paradox, because people just don't know which way is up often. But the problem with the argument, so you tell me what you think about this. So, Hitler's cover story.
Oh, shit. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my God. Come on here. We're running out of treats here. We're running out of treats that spoil the living honey with a $20 super chat. And I say, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Big baller in the house. And, of course, that makes you the new co-sponsor of the stream. Oh, we riding. Thank you so much, brother. Let's dive right back in.
Okay, so you tell me what you think about this. So, Hitler's cover story was that he wanted to make the glorious Third Reich and elevate the Germans to the highest possible status for the longest possible period of time. Okay, but that wasn't the outcome. The outcome was that Hitler shot himself through the head after he married his wife, who died from poison the same day, in a bunker underneath Berlin while Europe was in flames. Well, he was insisting that the Germans deserved exactly what they got because they weren't the noble people he thought they were. And then you might say, well, Hitler's plans collapsed in flames, and wasn't that a catastrophe? Or you could say that was exactly what he was aiming for from the beginning, because he was brutally resentful and miserable right from the time he was, a rejected artist at the age of 16. And so he was working, or something was working within him, and something that might well be regarded as demonic, whose end goal was precisely what it attained, which was the devastation of hundreds of millions of people, and Europe left in a smoking ruin. And the cover story was the Grand Third Reich. And so there's no reason at all to assume that we're not in exactly the same situation right now.
There's absolutely no reason. Whether it's because of the specific events or because of the lack of clear information. What is the state of our union? MAGA Republicans are okay, if that's what y'all say. But you're claiming we're not there.
third right.
But okay.
And so there's no reason at all to assume that we're not in exactly the same situation right now.
I think there's a great reason to assume. I think that Hitler's motives and everything he was trying to do wasn't a secret. I don't think that anybody had to guess that he was incredibly anti-Semitic, that his Aryan supremacy was going to lead to the destruction and the murder of like so many different people in concentration camps. Like none of this was a secret. It's not like he was hiding it.
He hid a lot of it.
I mean, like he tried to maybe hide the death camps, but nobody in Germany was wondering like, wow, crazy that pogroms are happening against Jewish people. That's so crazy. Or wow, they're all being shipped to just mainly the Jews to camps to work. Like that's kind of interesting. Or wow, he talks about this a lot in Mein Kampf, but maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't think you can compare like Hitler to people that are worried about climate change. The worry that I have here is because if we're applying.
Oh shit! He said, "Why not?"
I don't think you can compare like Hitler to people that are worried about climate change. The worry that I have here is because if we're applying this,
people in Germany thought Hitler was perfectly motivated by the highest of benevolent.
If I were to take this standard of evidence and apply this lens of analysis, couldn't I say the exact same thing about the conservative constellation of belief? They don't want to intervene anywhere in the world because they don't care about the problems there. They're anti-immigration because they hate brown people. Trump wanted to ban Muslims from coming to the United States.
You could say all of those things, but you would be stupid and wrong. Free speech.
Because he's xenophobic. Conservatives don't want to have taxes to help the poor because they want homeless people to starve and die in the winter. Like I feel like
some of that's true. And yes, you can adopt that criticism. I think the difference with regards especially to the libertarian side of the conservative enterprise, but also to some degree to the conservative enterprise, is they're not building a central gigantic organization to put forward this particular utopian claim. And so even if the conservatives are as morally addled as the leftists, and to some degree that might be true, they're not organized with the same gigantism in mind.
True.
And so they're not as
true. The gigantism that we were talking about earlier, the entity, the establishment that exists to back this stuff is so different. And so even if you want to say, well, the right's doing it too, okay, fine. But who is a more imminent threat?
dangerous at the moment. Now, they could well be, and they have been in the past, but at the moment they're not. And so, of course, you can be skeptical about people's motivations when they're brandishing a moral flag.
Why would we say that they're not as concerned about the gigantism? I feel like everybody is when it's a particular thing that they care about.
Sure.
You mean whether they would be inclined in that direction?
For sure. That conservatives wield the power of the government whenever they feel they need to, just as liberals do, right? Conservatives were very happy to see, for instance, abortion was brought back as a state-regulated thing.
That's a good objection. I think that.
I reject that. I don't think that's a good objection. The kicking back, okay, so maybe he's talking about the state governments. Okay, fair.
You're correct in your assumption that once people identify a core area of concern, they're going to be motivated to seek power to implement that concern.
I think cancel culture is a good idea too. I think conservatives prior to the 2000s,
cancel culture is a good idea. Let's hear
that concern.
I think cancel culture is a good idea too. I think conservatives prior to the 2000s, if they could censor everything related to either LGBT stuff or weird musical stuff or stuff that they didn't want their kids to watch, conservatives would do it. But now,
fucking cope. Well, we cancel and it's good because you guys would have definitely would have done it. The big censorship thing of that era of conservatives was putting parental parental advisory stickers on CDs. That's not the same as transing your children or being called transphobic if you won't.
To either LGBT stuff or weird musical stuff or stuff that they didn't want their kids to watch, conservatives would do it. But now that you see that like liberals and progressives are kind of wielding that corporate hammer, now conservatives are very much, well, hold on, we need freedom of speech, we need to platform everybody. And now progressives are like, well, hold on, maybe we shouldn't platform people.
I've got no disagreement with those things that you said, and I have no disagreement about your proposition that people will seek power to impose their central doctrine. Okay, so then you might say, and so we can have a very serious conversation about that. What do we have that ameliorates that tendency?
What do we have that ameliorates the tendency to want to use political power?
In the United States, we've got hopefully a form of decentralized government. I can't speak to Canada as much, but
yes, that's true. So that's one of the institutional protections against that, because what that does is put various forms of power striving in conflict with one another, right?
That's true. You're right. When you're right, you're right.
And so that's a very intelligent solution. But then there are psychological and philosophical solutions as well.
And one of them might be that you abjure the use of power, right, as a principle. And so and this is one of the things that was done very badly during the COVID era, let's say, because the rule should be something like you don't get to impose your solution on people using compulsion and force. There's a doctrine there, which is any policy that requires compulsion and force is to be looked upon with extreme skepticism. Now, it's tricky because now and then you have to deal with psychopaths, and they tend not to respond to anything but force. And so
this is where I think we're coming back into where we started, and this idea of psychopaths. So I do think he kind of is overplaying his hand on this thing about psychopaths and just calling anything that is not moral behavior psychopathic behavior. And I don't like it, but there is a framework there. There's a framework there that can be applied to society that would work. Can't say the same for Destiny.
Then you have to deal with psychopaths, and they tend not to respond to anything but force. And so there's an exception there that always has to be made, and it's a very tricky exception. But look, let me tell you a story, and you tell me what you think about this, because I think it's very relevant to the concern that you just expressed. And
I remember this. Okay, so this is a Bible story, and again, something that I don't actually remember what he says, but I remember that's a Bible story. And I remember not being triggered. That's like, oh, you're bringing God into this. There's a way to do this. There's a way to be, to put your Christianity very forward in your politics without forcing people like me away. Zibi said, did you get JB's point about Hitler secretly hating his own people and wanting to bring them to destruction? It's a tiny bit of a stretch, but it's not bad logic. Yeah, I mean, I think that just there's a lot of baggage with Hitler. I don't know that that is a great way to express that point, but I agree. It's not bad logic. Not the worst.
Because I think it's very relevant to the concern that you just expressed. And I don't believe that the conservatives are necessarily any less tempted by the calling of power than the leftists. That's going to vary from situation to situation. Though I would say probably overall in the 20th century, the leftists have the worst record in terms of sheer numbers of people killed. So
I mean, it depends on how we're quantifying
not
that.
really. Okay,
Yeah,
we'll just quantify
sure.
Mao. How's that? Direct death of 100 million people. So, that's a pretty stark fact. And if we're going to argue about that, well, then we're really not going to get anywhere. So,
I'm not disagreeing that the Holodomor happened as well. The Soviet Union and
yes,
China were horrible.
20 to 50 million
I'm not going
people in the
to.
Soviet. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, of course.
And so war of.
I'm just saying for World War II, it depends on how much you attribute the war deaths to Nazi Germany, et cetera, et cetera. But sure, like largely speaking, I don't think that the left beat the right because the right wasn't trying. I don't think it's because Hitler's lack of trying led him to kill less people than who ended up dying during the Great Leap Forward or during the industrialization of the Soviet
Yes, well, I also think it's an open question still to what degree Hitler's policies were right-wing versus left-wing. And no one's done the analysis properly yet to determine that.
Well, what do we
because
consider?
It was a national socialist movement for a reason. And the socialist part of it wasn't accidental.
Well, but there was no, cooperatively formed businesses that were owned by all of the people, for the people, and distributed to the people. And I don't think redistribution was high on Hitler's list of things to do.
That's true. It was a strange mix of totalitarian policy.
I don't think it was a strange mix. I think it was a bid to appeal to mid-left and center-left, the KPD and the German Socialist Party, by calling themselves National Socialists. I think it was very much like an authoritarian, ultra-nationalist regime that pretty squarely fits with. People get mad if you call something far right or far left because they have an
well, one of the things I would have done if I would have been able to hang on to my professorship at the University of Toronto would have been to extract out a random sample of Nazi policies and strip them of markers of their origin and present them to a set of people with conservative or leftist beliefs and see who agreed with them more.
Whoa. Somebody do that. Somebody do that.
And that analysis has never been done as far as I know. So we actually don't know. And we could know if the social scientists would do their bloody job, which they don't, generally speaking. That's something we could know. We could probably use the AI systems we have now, the large language models, to determine to what degree left and right beliefs intermingled in the rise of National Socialism. So that's all technically possible. So, and it hasn't been done, so it's a matter of opinion.
Sure, so, I don't necessarily disagree. But that's something you could do.
Okay, I was going to tell you this story. Okay, well, this has to do with the use of power. So I spent a time with a group of scholars and analyzing the Exodus story, an Exodus seminar recently. And so the Exodus story is a very interesting story because it's it's a, what would you say? It's an analysis of the central tendency of movement away from tyranny and slavery. That's a good way of thinking about it.
Okay.
So the possibility of tyranny and the possibility of slavery are possibilities that present themselves to everyone within the confines of their life, psychologically and socially. You can be your own tyrant with regards to the imposition of a set of radical doctrines that you have to abide by and punish yourself brutally whenever you deviate from them. And we all contend with the issue of tyranny and slavery. And there's an alternative path, and that's what the Exodus story lays out. And Moses is the exemplar of that alternative path, although he has his flaws. And one of his flaws is that he turns too often to the use of force. So he
turns too often to the use of force. God damn it, Moses!
He kills an Egyptian, for example, an Egyptian noble who has slayed a Hebrew, one of Moses' Hebrew slave brothers, and he has to leave. There's a variety of indications in the text that he uses his staff, he uses his rod, and he uses power when he's supposed to use persuasion and legal or verbal invitation and argumentation. And this happens most spectacularly right at the end of the sojourn. So Moses has spent 40 years leading the Israelites through the desert.
Okay, so if you're not a Christian and are not used to this super long way of telling stories, dude was using too much force when he should have been using his words.
And he's right on the border of the promised land. And really what that means at a more fundamental basis is that he's at the threshold of attaining what he's been aiming at, what he's devoted his whole life to. And he's been a servant of that purpose in the highest order. And that Israelites are still in the desert, which means they're lost and confused. They don't know which way is up. They're still slaves. And now they're dying of thirst, which is what you die of, spiritual thirst, if you're sufficiently lost.
This is where he loses me. This is where he loses me. It's like I get that there's a lot of symbolism and there's a lot of value in those symbols, but get to the fucking point. What are you trying to say?
And they go to Moses and ask him to intercede with God, and God tells Moses to speak to the rocks so that they'll reveal the water within. And Moses strikes the rocks with his rod twice instead, right? He uses force. And so God says to him,
so we're still at Moses used force when he should have used his words.
You'll now die before you enter the promised land. It's Joshua who enters.
Is that not how it works for everybody? You die first, and then you enter the promised land. What am I missing? Why is that a relevant statement?
To him, you'll now die before you enter the promised land.
Who goes to the promised land? Oh, are we talking about on earth? Okay.
It's Joshua who enters and not Moses. Okay, and you might wonder why I'm telling you that story.
Yup.
I'm telling you that story because those concepts at the center of that cloud of concepts that you described are stories, right? They're stories. And if they're well formulated, they're archetypal stories. And this is an archetypal story that's illustrating the danger of the use of compulsion and force. And so one of the problems you're obviously obsessed by and that I'm trying to solve is, what do we do as an alternative to tyranny, whether it's for a utopian purpose in the future or maybe for the purpose of like conservatives censoring music lyrics they don't approve of. And one answer is, we don't use force. We do the sort of thing that you and I are trying to do right now.
Based.
Which is to have a conversation that's aimed at clarifying things. And so that's a principle that's something like the consent of the government.
That was a really, really, really long way to be like, well, conversation can get you a lot further than violence.
Right? It's something like, but it's also something like, you have the right to go to hell in a handbasket if that's what you choose. And as long as you don't, in doing so, you're not in everyone's way too much.
That's a shit. Me too.
You have the right to your own destiny, right? And so, and you don't get to use power to impose that. That's the other thing that worries me about what's going on the YouTube.
Have you seen the meme where it does like Google Maps and it just shows like, it's like 45 minutes. It's like 40 years. Like, bro, what you doing? What you doing?
Utopian front, because the problem is, once you conjure up a climate apocalypse and you make the case that there's an impending disaster that's delayed, And you might say, well, delayed how long? And the response would be, well, we're not sure, but it's likely to occur in the next 100 or so years, which is pretty inaccurate. You now have a universal get out of jail card that can be utilized extremely well by power mad psychopaths. And they will absolutely do that because power mad psychopaths use whatever they can to further their cause.
So this is my issue. I think this is my issue with a lot.
So again, I think the meat there was again focusing on the value of conversation and ideas versus just going directly to violence. So let's hear the response.
To further their cause.
So this is my issue. I think this is my issue with a lot of people when it comes to political conversations. I think that everything you've said is true.
Are we gonna get a projection?
And I think that all of it is it's good analysis, but I feel like it just gets wielded sometimes in one direction, and then people kind of miss that it completely and fully describes their entire side as well.
Ooh, I like that. I think that there is projection there because the leftism does the same exact thing. But I think I agree. Let's take this from Gonsack and run that back. So, do you ever take a road trip with some really bitchy and beady people? That shit can take way longer than it should, just because people complicate shit, and that's in a car. Fair enough. So, yeah, I think so. We're gonna run it back. I want to make sure. But I do think so. But that doesn't mean that he's wrong. It just means that he doesn't see that he's doing the exact same thing.
I think that everything you've said is true, and I think that all of it is. It's good analysis, but I feel like it just gets wielded sometimes in one direction.
It wields, they capitalize one direction. It gets wielded sometimes in one direction. So the principles that you hold should go both ways, but they only wield in one direction.
And then people kind of miss that it completely and fully describes their entire side as well.
I'm going to let him continue before we ring the projection.
And the thing that I feel like the only solution for this is you hinted at it. It's more than just conversation, although that's a good start. We have to go back to inhabiting similar areas. We have to go back to inhabiting similar like media landscapes. I think that the issue that we're running into right now more than anything else is people live in completely separate realities at the moment, such that if we were even to describe basic reality, how many illegal immigrants came into the United States last year? That should be a factual number that we can know.
How many do you think?
Somebody.
Great question. So I'm not going to give him a projection on that. There is an element of, well, this is happening and I'm part of it too. That's not the same thing as projection. So we got to keep it accurate.
Illegal immigrants came into the United States last year. That should be a factual number that we can know.
How many do you think?
Somebody. The actual number, probably in the hundreds of thousands. I think some conservatives think it's 3 million per year over the past 3 years because they look at like border contacts or they look at asylum seekers and they're not looking at like,
I think it's 3 points.
I mean, like the burning bush. And then you talked to God. You're definitely tripping. Come on, man.
The actual number, probably in the hundreds of thousands. I think some conservatives think it's 3 million per year over the past 3 years because they look at like border contacts or they look at asylum seekers and they're not looking at
I
like,
think it's 3.6 million.
Came into the U.S. and stayed?
Yes, through the southern border.
Okay. So
the historical
average
is about 1 million.
I understand the sure. Well, historically, there's like 13 to 15 million people full stop in the United States illegally.
Yeah, before Biden's like, hey, come on over. Just read this card and say seeking asylum, and we will put you up in a fancy hotel.
That's like the whole history of illegal immigration to the United States. But so
exactly. Doesn't that kind of tell you that like right now, the same way when they printed $40 trillion, whatever it was, that the number of dollars in existence went up in a crazy degree? Well, that would be crazy if that. Yeah, it was fucking crazy.
Hey, maybe I'm wrong there, right? So we can say that's an example of us living in a fundamentally different reality.
Well, the Pew Research Group has established quite conclusively that the variability over the last 20 years for illegal migration in the south border is between 300,000 and 1.2 million.
Well, the Pew Research can only establish, I think, the number of people attempting to cross. I don't know if they can know. I don't know if Pew.
Here we go. Now we're going to get into the semantics of like, well, what are we actually talking? Motherfuckers that don't have the proper documentation who are here illegally. That's what we're concerned about. So if you want it, well, technically that's a migrant. Technically that's then you're not addressing the same issue that we're talking about. because that is irrelevant. The fact is that there are people here and there are Americans that need the money that are going to those immigrants. Now, whether or not the money would go to those Americans had the immigrants not been here is a valid concern. That is a valid concern. That doesn't mean it's okay to just give it away to non-citizens.
Who does like census analysis? I'd have to see.
Well, I don't. Well, that's a different issue, right?
Sure.
Because I don't know how you measure how many illegal immigrants there are actually in the country.
I understand. I just want to point out. I just want to point out. I agree with you. I listened to a lot of Rush Limbaugh growing up. I understand the fear of having a government agency say climate change. Therefore, we have a blank check to do whatever we want.
Okay, so at least he sees it there.
That's
Yes,
scary.
which is what they are doing.
The conservatives do the same thing, though.
I'm not
They
claiming
did it-
otherwise.
Yeah, but the problem is, I think people don't talk about it. So, for instance, I heard
People don't talk about what? Wait. What? Did I just miss that?
same thing, though.
I'm not
They did
claiming
it-
otherwise.
That's a
Yes,
scary.
which is what they are doing.
The conservatives do the same thing, though.
I'm not
They did
claiming
it-
otherwise.
Yeah, but the problem.
Yeah, so we're the ones who talk about the Uniparty more than anything else. We're the ones who, fuck the GOP. We got to take that shit over because they're working with the Democrats. We're the ones who are like, oh, fuck Kevin McCarthy. He's basically a Democrat. We're already doing our part of calling out what we don't like about our side. Where you at? Where you at?
Which is what they are doing.
The conservatives do the same thing, though.
I'm not
They did
claiming
it-
otherwise.
Yeah, but the problem is, I think people don't talk about it. So, for instance, I heard, so we can pretend now that the conservative argument was just compulsory vaccines are bad because they infringe on my freedom. That wasn't the conservative argument. The conservative argument was that mass deaths were going to happen, mass side effects were going to happen.
No, that we didn't know if mass side effects were going to happen or if mass deaths were going to happen. That is a very important word in this context, Destiny. If is what it all hinges upon. Because if people are saying this will happen, those people were wrong. The people who are saying this might happen were valid. They may like it didn't happen in the numbers that we were that people were afraid of. But those are two different positions. This will happen is a different position than I'm afraid this might happen. I don't believe that a God exists is not the same position as I believe no God exists. So I said, how about using sides to justify stupidity of the past, present, and now future? If we are smart enough to see it, we should be smart enough to come together and stop it. It just plays into division. Well, division makes money. Division makes money.
Freedom. That wasn't the conservative argument. The conservative argument was that mass deaths were going to happen, mass side effects were going to happen. There was going to be all this corruption and stuff related to vaccine
There was a lot of corruption. So we were right on that one, but continue.
distribution, to the crazier theories were microchips and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who genuinely believed that there was microchips in it. There was some crazy people, but again, as I just tweeted out the other day, there was somebody posting like somebody with a swastika tattoo, and I was like, notice how most people on the right who see this person, just no other context but a swastika tattoo, they're gonna make fun of them or put them down or whatever. But you see the most flamboyant fucking black power, whatever, or trans this, or believe all women, or whatever it is, and the average lefties eat it the fuck up. That is the difference between me and you. I'm willing to call out my own side. I'm willing to point exactly to what I don't like. I just put a video out about the when that lady was singing to Trump at Mar-a-Lago. I don't think he did anything wrong, but it's still a cringy fucking video. And as somebody who's not in a fucking cult, I have no problem being like, hey, yeah, the guy that I want to be the president of the United States, he looks pretty fucking stupid here. Not that hard. It's really not that hard. Division makes money is the perfect analogy for fractional reserve banking. Yeah. Yeah.
To vaccine distribution, to the crazier theories were microchips and blah, blah, blah. None of that came true. Absolutely is an under.
So yeah, Guantek said, you think Destiny would be would understand that idea. Only he says it might as a way to cover his ass. We do it because it was actually a reason to think what we did. And that's what he's not doing here.
Absolutely.
Is covering his ass. He's saying, y'all thought this, y'all thought that was going to happen, and none of it came true. No, that's not what any of us thought. We thought it might possibly be a consideration given how shady everybody was being about it. Usually, when people are being shady about shit, you shouldn't put that shit into your body. General rule of life. If people are being shady about some shit, don't put it inside your body.
None of the conservative fear-mongering related to the mRNA vaccines came to fruition. But
Yeah, who's Robert Malone? Who's Joe Rogan? Who's Peter McCullough?
now that's all forgotten. And that was used
Yeah, I completely just forgot all three of those people's names.
an
None of it.
excuse
What
to-
do you make of the excess deaths?
that for related to vaccines. There are
All right, so and then let's see if this was all the stuff that we already did. All right, so we're gonna do one of these because we can't do them all. So the options are, we have psychopathy and levels of malevolence. We have, do marriage and society exist without force? Kind of feel like we touched on that already. Tit for tat, force or justice. And again, I kind of feel like that. So, okay, we are between psychopathy levels and malevolence, or why Steven debates. Let me know in the chat. Which one would you like to see? No? Nobody? All right. First one. Let's ride. Psychopathy. And was it this one?
I have to
All
ask,
right,
'cause
here
I
we
have watched a lot of your stuff
go.
in the
There we
past.
go.
I remember you speaking very distinctly on this, that for instance, when two men are communicating with each other, there is an underlying threat of force that kind of puts on the guardrails those particular social interactions.
I
For
think
instance,
Yeah,
I
the
was
threat
there
of
when-
force is
Yeah.
don't be psychopathic.
What is
Okay, so I think we covered this part, but he kind of cut out this part. So yeah, we'll have covered the whole thing here.
how broader is psychopathic here? Are we defining?
This is so this is the part of the conversation that I guess was cut out that we definitely needed, because when he's talking about I've already talked about the psychopathic people in society, but that was in response to somebody stealing something. So that's not necessarily the same thing. So this seems to be right where that picked up.
Psychopathic.
What is how broader is psychopathic here? Are we defining?
Well, I can define it. I mean,
Sure, yeah, go for it.
Well, a psychopath will gain short-term advantage at the cost of long-term relationship.
Okay,
That's really the core issue. Well, you made a reference to something like that earlier in your discussion when you pointed out that people claim to be motivated, let's say, by principle, but will default to short-term gratification more or less at the
for
drop of
social
a hat.
goods, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the exaggerated proclivity to do that is at the essence of psychopathy. So it's very
Do you think,
very
I'm curious
immature.
with this definition of psychopathy, does
It's
that
the
mean like,
definition of psychopathy. It's not it's not mine. That's the core of psychopathy.
okay, I'm not in the United States, I think we call it all ASPD now.
No,
for the-
it's separate from that's antisocial personality disorder.
I
They're
thought that
separate.
subsumed psychopathy and sociopathy.
Psychopathy is no psychopathy is more like it's more the pathological core of antisocial personality disorder.
Okay,
Wow. I mean, thank you. This is a much having enough understanding to see why that what Destiny said was nonsensical, but like not enough to correct him. M169 is on point. There you go. You're not gonna.
Psychopathy is more like it's more the pathological core of antisocial personality disorder.
okay, maybe
So yeah, like somebody with antisocial personality disorder is going to be psychopathic, but not every psychopath is going to have that particular disorder. So the Soul said my youngest son is streaming his Star Wars game to his Discord group. There you go, get him started. I can hear him getting passionate about it all the way in the living room. Not relevant, but hilarious. Yeah, hell yeah, we gotta get the kids out there speaking up, even if it's just video games. Being out there and being comfortable with talking about anything is good. Just
that might be
So
true. Okay,
that's a better way of thinking. The worst, a small number of criminals are responsible for the vast majority of crimes. It's 1% commit 65%, something like that.
Do you think is psychopathy something that can be environmentally induced, or do you think this is core to a person?
it's typically core to a person, I believe.
It's both?
Okay.
So, for example, if you're disagreeable, like you are, by the way, your proclivity, if you went wrong, would be to go wrong in an antisocial and psychopathic direction. That's more true of men, for example, than it is for women. That's why men are more likely to be in prison by a lot. It's 10 to 1 or 20 to 1 generally. It depends on the particular crime, with it being higher proportion of men as the violence of the crime mounts. So you can imagine on the genetic versus environment side. So imagine that when you're delivered your temperamental hand of cards, you're going to have a certain set of advantages that go along with them that are part and parcel of that genetic determination. And there's going to be a certain set of temptations as well. So, for example, if you're high in trait neuroticism, you're going to be quite sensitive to the suffering of others and be able to detect that. That's useful for infant care. But the cost you'll pay is that you'll be more likely to develop depression and anxiety. And if you're disagreeable, extroverted, and unconscientious, then the place you'll go if you go badly is in the psychopathic or antisocial direction.
Shout out to Pitt's take. This sounds right up his alley. Guys, the fact that you are here, you are watching, you are part of the conversation, that is absolutely enough. You never have to apologize for not having the money to send me, because I don't have money to send you. If you do, and you do decide that this is worth your money, that you want to see this grow, that you want me to be able to more easily go to conventions and make contacts and bring people on the channel, then I will happily use that money for that purpose. But this is a free show, so there's no apologies necessary. And if you're just here to talk, then you're doing more than most people. So as much as I definitely need money, and I definitely appreciate when you do, that is not even close to a requirement. Many of you have never donated a single cent, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Sometimes you donate 99 cents, and that is more that's more valuable to me than you. It's not about the money, guys. It's the only relevance of money is the fact that I just need to be able to live. But I also have a job. So genuinely, it's not, it's just whatever you guys feel like is appropriate and what you want to do. That's it. Yeah. Love you long time.
And there are environmental determinants of that to some degree.
Sure. Genes express themselves in an environment. I agree. When I'm just curious for the definition of psychopathy, for short-term gain at the expense of long-term
relationship. Really, that's probably the best bit. Yeah.
When you look at stuff like people that are self-destructive, say people that engage in behaviors like obesity, is that like a type of
especially comments after the fact
psychopathy to you, or is that like something
psychopathy or psychopathy
different, or how do you define these types of things, I guess, or how do you view that type of thing?
Well, no, there is an overlap in that addictive processes, one of which might lead to obesity, do have this problem of prioritization of the short term. But so that overlaps with the short term orientation of the psychopath. But a psychopath an obese person isn't gaining anything from your demise to facilitate their obesity, right? So there's a predatory and parasitical element to psychopathy that's not there in other addictive short term.
I was going to make a point about, the larger implication of, fat acceptance or I'm not really fat acceptance, but more fat positivity, body, like that shit. But I don't really think it's relevant.
Processes.
Do you think, is it possible that there are things, because then to circle back to the tribal example I gave, isn't it possible that people can commit harms against other people where they're not necessarily gaining?
I am lazy. I'm a lazy fuck, and that's why I'm skinny and barely eat and do drugs as well. So we in the same but opposite boat.
From their demise, but it's just some other sort of gain that they're better. So for instance, like I'm talking to some friends and I'm just gossiping or shit talking another person. I'm not necessarily feeling good that I'm trashing them per se. I'm feeling good because this group of friends might be more favorably because I have like a gossip or something to share with them.
Well, but that's the gain right there. And you are contributing to the demise of the people you're gossiping about.
But okay. There we go. I was like, it's not really relevant to talk about how, like, if you're gonna be out there, if you're gonna be fat and you're gonna be like, yes, being fat is good, then there's other people who are gonna see that and then, make bad choices in their own lives. But I thought it wasn't relevant. But JVP is saying exactly the point that I was gonna say, so he said it. Hashtag appeal to authority.
That's the game right there. And you are contributing to the demise of the people
You are,
that you're
for sure.
gossiping about.
But I think I feel like there's fundamentally different type of thought process between like, I want to tell you something juicy about this guy because it'll make you like me, versus I want to tell you something juicy about this guy because I hate this guy and I want him to like have a worse reputation among people.
Rumtuck said obesity is such a bad example. Obesity sacrifices the future of yourself, not relationships with others. If an obese person eats all the good and doesn't feed their family, then that is psychopathy. I think what JP was trying to do is show how obesity is different from the psychopathy of what Destiny's talking about with gossiping. I think. I don't know. My metabolism is like that, but I also don't eat a lot. Like, eating is a fucking chore. Eating is a fucking chore. That's a whole rabbit hole. But yeah, I don't know. But I think he was that was the point, is that he was saying, well, exactly what you're saying. Obesity doesn't hurt other people, while typical psychopathy would.
That's the game right there.
And
let's go back.
there's some that possible that
Right.
See, an obese person isn't gaining anything from your demise to facilitate their obesity.
Yeah. So that's exactly what he was saying.
just gossiping or shit talking.
And you are contributing to the demise of the people
You are,
you're
for
gossiping
sure.
about.
But I think there's like, I feel like there's fundamentally different type of thought process between like, I want to tell you something juicy about this guy because it'll make you like me, versus I want to tell you something juicy about this guy because I hate this guy and I want him to like have a worse reputation among people. I feel like there's different drivers for that.
I would say that's an interesting distinction. I would say probably that the hatred-induced malevolence is a worse form of malevolence than the popularity-inducing malevolence.
Yeah, the only reason
it's a tough one, but
yeah, the only reason I bring that up is because I feel like a lot of malevolence that we have social guardrails for is that type of like selfish malevolence where you're not. I would argue even the majority of malevolence in the world is usually people acting selfishly or being inconsiderate, not necessarily like I hate this.
Yeah,
person,
I think that's right.
Sure,
I think that that's why Dante outlined levels of hell.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, exactly that. And I mean, that book was an investigation into the structure of malevolence, right? He put betrayal at the bottom, which I think is right. I think that's right, because people who develop post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, which almost only accompanies an encounter with malevolence rather than tragic circumstances, they are often betrayed, sometimes by other people, but often by themselves. And yes, there are levels of hell, and you outlined a couple there.
So I guess then my question is just that if you have people, so the kid that steals an orange from a stand, not because he hates the shop owner, but because he wants the orange or he's hungry, without some type of societal, it doesn't have to be the government, it could be family, religious, without some type of use of force, do you think that society ever exists without
use force on your wife?
Well, what
Maybe. That was an interesting response. I mean, maybe it just caught him out of left field. But all right, we're moving on. See, you guys are getting your money's worth. I gotta hear where this ends. So we're moving on to the next part. But we are ending it after this part and heading over.
Do you think that
to the after party
society ever exists without
use force on your wife?
Well, what are we considering force? Is withholding sex, for instance, is that considered force, or is saying we're going to cancel it?
Got him.
Of an expected reward is a punishment. So you could. Well, no, but I mean, this is a serious question. I mean, look, if we're thinking about the optimization of social structures, we might as well start from the base level of social structure and scaffold up.
Sure. So right? I like if a wife is upset at a husband, for instance, would that be considered use of force? I think a negative punishment. You're removing a stimulus to punish a person for something. Yeah. Would you consider that like a use of force? Or
I would say it would depend to some degree on the intent.
I want to talk about this in the after party.
The intent is to punish it.
Well, if the intent is to punish, then it's starting to move into the domain of force. I mean, look, while we've been talking, there's been bursts of emotion, right? Yeah. And that's because we're freeing entropy and trying to close and to enclose it again. And so that's going to produces negative emotion fundamentally, most fundamentally anxiety and pain, and secondarily something like anger, because those emotions are quite tightly linked.
Sure.
And so within the confines of a marriage, because we might as well make it concrete, there are going to be times when disagreements result in bursts of emotion. And those bursts of emotion don't necessarily have to have an instrumental quality, right? It's when the emotion is used manipulatively to gain an advantage that's short-term for the person
And then maybe that's at the expense of the other person, or even at
Right.
the expense of the person who benefits future self.
And so he's talking about something that you'll do that is at the expense of your partner or even yourself. And so something like cheating, where you're, I mean, I'm sure you can come up with examples where, whatever, but in a typical example of cheating where it's wrong and it's going to fuck up your marriage and it's going to fuck up your you're going to feel bad about it and so on and so forth. That's what we talk about.
That's at the
He used lots of fancy words, and I just break it down. Be like, you don't feel so good.
expense of the other person, or even at the expense of the person who benefits future self. Then it starts to tilt into the manipulative. There's a tetrad of traits. So narcissism, Machiavellianism, that's manipulativeness. Narcissism is the desire for unearned social status. That's what you'd gain, for example, if you were gossiping and elevating your social status. Machiavellianism, narcissism, psychopathy, that's predatory parasitism, and those culminate in sadism. And that cloud of negative emotion that's released in the aftermath of disagreement can be tilted in the direction of those traits. And that's when it becomes malevolent. And that's when the problem of force starts to become paramount, because
So yeah, what is the long and short of it is that, when in this context, force is not a very simple thing, and you can talk about force as only physical force, but that's not the only context. And if you within the confines of a marriage, you can definitely do things that are at least, if not forceful, definitely manipulative. And of course, you shouldn't be doing those things. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, I did not expect us to get through that whole damn thing, but I am so glad we did. We went pretty long, but I would have expected to go quite a bit longer. I mean, we missed the intro and like, how did you get started streaming and all that stuff, but we don't need that bullshit. So, yeah, shout out to Guamtech with the living hoodie. And hello, critics. Welcome to the party. We are closing down, but we just I definitely implore you to check out the replay. We just went over the conversation between Destiny and Jordan Peterson. I made sure to get all the good stuff with the COVID stuff up front. And then we went to some climate stuff. I think it was a good time, but welcome. Unwatched Foe just dropped the link to our free Discord server. So if you like what's going on here, click. It's free to join. We are about to head over there. We have a free channel for anybody to join, and you can become a member of the channel and get full access to the entire thing, including our after party, where we are about to head over right now, where you're not stuck behind your keyboard. You're actually on screen with me and everybody else. It is a grand old time. Come and join us. But thank you. Welcome. I am live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and I put out clips every single day, and I go live whenever I want to hang out with you guys. So hit that subscribe button, and I would love to hang out with you more. You did indeed. Yeah, this was a good one. It was, usually when it comes to JBP, it is, I get a little scared because, at the end of this, it was, again, a lot of in the weeds, not super accessible stuff. And so that's why I don't necessarily cover him that often. But when we can see a matchup like this, I mean, yeah, we even though I just did a Destiny stream, we had to cover him, and I think it showed a lot of positive things about coming together and discussing these things, even if we disagree. And more specifically, I think that of all that we've seen out of Destiny, most recently, his gaffes, for lack of a better term, have been the most informative. Of like, oh, okay, like, check yourself. There's levels to this shit. You might be, a big fish in a small pond, but you head over to the ocean and you need to figure out where it is that you actually stand. So very, very interesting. Let's catch this from Guam Tech. Said, I was so happy to see Destiny go into the cage with the big dogs and find out he's not as vicious as he thought. what's that German word for enjoying someone else's suffering? Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude indeed. So I didn't necessarily get the Schadenfreude from I don't have any desire to see him do badly, because I do respect him. I do enjoy his content. I do think he's a generally a good dude. Certainly has some flaws, but who amongst us doesn't? So I was saying I was hoping this one would get covered when I listened yesterday, and lo and behold, the vibe was a vibe, and you know how we do. I want to thank you guys so very much for hanging out with me, and you guys have blessed me so hard in this one. You have blessed me so hard. I don't know the last time we did a stream that was this bountiful. So thank you so much. First, we gotta call out the comment of the night. They're turning the clouds gay. Dilly to that. Zibby the Strange calling out to Alex Jones. And then what did we do here? We had Unwanted Foe coming in hot. Then he outsponsored himself. Then we had Cash, our very first true disciple. We had Guam Tech signing up again. We had Soil doing the same thing. Then we had Unwanted Foe outsponsored himself once again. But at the end of the day, it came down, aside from Cash, it came down to our boy Guam Tech with the $20 super chat. Guys, thank you so very much. I don't know how else to express how much I appreciate you guys. It is everything to me. And this channel, this community, what we're doing here is real. And I hope that, you know, as this money reflects, that I'm showing you more and more that I got something. We're doing something. I might not have all the perfect answers, but I've got enough things in place that when I get to talk to Jordan Peterson, or I got to talk to Destiny, and they say, no, you're wrong about this, I can, okay, all right, I can fix that, and we can move on, and we can be a force in America to make it better. If that's what you want, you are in the right place. Once again, this is Morty, and I have been your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Thank you so very much, guys. Until next time, we are out of here. Peace.